Yeah, good morning, and we are live now. So request all the speakers to put on their videos, and a warm welcome to all the distinguished speakers and delegates at the third edition of Rajasthan IoT Summit with the theme Demystifying the Potential of IoT. In fact, as we enter into the 75th year of Indian independence, and we are all celebrating the spirit of India at 75. Technology is one area wherein we can derive a lot of satisfaction on whatever we have achieved over the years and how we position ourselves to have an accelerated adoption of technology, shaping future organizations, how we live, how we work, how we interact with each other. And we have a very learned mix of speakers with us today, and look forward to an intense discussion that will take us forward uh, as we progress towards the technological adoption and improving the quality of life and quality of work. So with these words, we will start the session. I would request Mr. Bimal Patwari, who is the conference chair for Rajasthan IoT Summit and founder and CEO of Pinnacle Infotech. In fact, I would like to take a moment to introduce to Mr. Patwari. Mr. Patwari is the first generation entrepreneur and founder of Pinnacle Infotech Solutions. It's the global leader in providing engineering and BIM solutions to international construction industry, architects and engineering firms. He has extensively worked with architects, engineering companies, consultants, and government agencies in USA, Europe, Australia, and Middle East. He is electronics engineer from IIT Kharagpur and has done postgraduate diploma in management from IIM Lucknow, where he got the Director's Gold Medal for Academic Excellence. He is also recipient of several awards in the IT sector. He got Top IT Innovators category award by NASSCOM from 2009 to 2015. He is also awarded as Top Exporter and Highest Job Creator in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities by STPI in 2012-13, 13-14, and 14-15. And he has also received Deloitte Technology Fast 500 Award in 2014 for 86% growth in technology as per Asia Pacific ranking, and Deloitte Technology Fast 50 India Award in 2015. So with these words, we welcome you, Mr. Patwari, and over to you for your welcome remarks.
Thank you, Atulji. Good morning, Ms. Mugdha Sinha, Secretary, Science and Technology, Government of Rajasthan. Mr. Raja Shanmugam, Global Head, Strategy and Business Development, IoT Business Unit TCS. Dr. Ajay Datta, Chairman, FICCI Rajasthan Subcommittee on IT and ITeS, and founder and CEO, Data Ingenious Global Limited. Mr. Ankur Basu, Managing Director, Technology Consulting, PwC India. Mr. Atul Sharma, Head, FICCI Rajasthan State Council. Distinguished speakers of the summit today and audience of this virtual conference. On behalf of FICCI and on my personal behalf, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you to this third edition of Rajasthan IoT Summit. It is our pleasure to bring the third edition of the event with the theme Demystifying the Potential of IoT. Now let's first demystify what is IoT. The Internet of Things, or IoT, refers to the billions of physical devices around the world that are now connected to the internet or to the network, all collecting and sharing data. Connecting to all these different objects and adding sensors to them adds a new level of digital intelligence, enabling them to communicate real-time data without involving a human being. Surprisingly, even our computers and even our smartphone are not considered IoT devices, as these require human intervention. The IoT has rapidly become one of the most familiar expressions across the technology domain, with the potential to fundamentally shift the way we interact with our surroundings. In fact, it is bringing a paradigm shift today in our lives, and the emerging trends of IoT are making great difference in every domain, such as manufacturing, automotive and transportation, construction and facilities management, edge computing, healthcare, smart cities, artificial intelligence, and many more. Today, we are really happy that we have experts from almost every domain who would enlighten us on the IoT disruptions in their respective fields. And trust me, after the invention of wheel and internet, probably IoT is the next device which is going to disrupt our society, which is going to, in a positive sense, and make our lives very different. Even our Gai Mata has adopted IoT. It's so, today the technologists have strapped our Gai Mata with various IoT devices. They have even placed an IoT device in Gai Mata's stomach. I mean, I couldn't believe it. So we have been able to place the IoT device with 4 years of battery life. And what does it do? It gives us minute-to-minute information about cow's stomach, and it transmits health data over Wi-Fi, providing minute-by-minute data on cow's activities in the stomach, its movement in the stomach, the pH of its stomach, and temperature. And this is automatically monitored. And we are, imagine a dairy farm with 500 cows and buffaloes, and the whole system is automated today to take care when to feed the cow, what is the problem, and it gives you advance warning that the health of the cow is going to be, so you can take preventive actions. So you can imagine what kind of disruptions it can bring into our society. Imagine an IoT placed in our brain. I shudder to think what will happen when such things could happen, and this is becoming a reality. Imagine a large warehouse of 2 lakh square feet and stocking 90,000 types of products, loading and unloading a truck in 20 minutes, and stacking all the products efficiently in the warehouse. What would have probably taken 500 people to manage the warehouse can be done by 200 robots and just 50 people. So, from intelligent machines capable of performing automated tasks to augmented wearables that allow people to work more efficiently and safely, companies are experimenting with new ways of putting the latest IoT innovations to use. And I would leave this to our experts today to tell us more about that. Now, every introduction of technology is followed by apprehension of employment reduction. When ATMs were introduced in banks, it was feared that there would be a huge unemployment. But today, banking sector employs many more people than the pre-ATM days. Same is the story with the desktop publishing, and every field where we have got automated, we have found it has created more employment. It has created growth in the society. So technology creates new type of job opportunities. But what we need is, we need to change our curriculum in schools and colleges. We need to retrain our people in the industry and government. And this is the biggest challenge that we have. With these advancements in technologies, we are also experiencing heightened risks related to cyber security. The sophistication of cyber threats is increasing with each passing day, and thus organizations need to be cautious about maintaining a safe, secure, and robust cyber security posture. FICCI is committed to work closely with the government and other stakeholders so as to put Rajasthan and the nation at large in a bright spot. We are glad to provide a platform for collaboration of stakeholders from different industries to develop a new solution for our future. Today, we have members from government, academia, industry, facility providers, and users. I hope the deliberations during the day will clarify the role of each one of us. I wish this summit all the best and a happy session. Stay safe and take care.
Thank you, Mr. Patwari. In fact, you have very comprehensively encapsulated the entire gamut of opportunities that lies ahead, and rightly said, if there are one set of jobs that go with technology, there are many more which are created along with adoption of technology. So their apprehension and fear of employment related fear is uncalled for, and you have cited very practical example of banking sector, and also a correlation of IoT with agriculture, dairy is also points towards a wider adoption and a grassroots level adoption of technology in times to come. So thank you for your thoughts. Now we have our next speaker, Mr. Ankur Basu, who is Managing Director Technology Consulting at PwC India. And he has over 25 years of industry experience. He leads industrial IoT competency at PwC India and responsible for industry proposition, innovation, alliances, and skill development. He has worked in sectors like metals and mining, infrastructure, e-commerce. And prior to PwC, he has led a digital startup, Infotech Consulting, which was at just NASSCOM Emerge 50 winner in 2015. He has held CEO and CIO position, mostly in services companies, and he is an industry 4.0 evangelist and speaks often in industrial forum. He is also mentor to social initiative called foodforall.org that provides low-cost nutritious food to underprivileged school children in Delhi suburban areas. So welcome, Mr. Basu, and over to you.
Thank you. Just a quick sound check. Hope I'm audible.
Yeah. All good, please.
Great. So first of all, good morning, FICCI. Good morning to my fellow panelists, fellow speakers, and the industry leaders who have come together today to discuss on this very relevant topic, demystifying the potential of IoT. Now, I must tell you that I speak quite often, and around 5 years until 2020 beginning, it was all about demystifying IoT, but it was a pleasant surprise to hear the topic, the demystifying potential of IoT, which means IoT as a concept is no more a hype as it used to be around 5 years back, and industry is now looking at various kinds of use cases that actually gives them a competitive advantage in the ecosystem. So I think the timing could not have been better. Given the kind of conducive environment we have today. You talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat package, the PLI scheme. You talk about the various COEs that are being proposed by MIT, and many of these COEs are already up and running in multiple states. Similarly, the smart city program, 100 smart cities, that is definitely in the planning stage, and many smart cities have already taken shape. So I would say that we are living in very exciting times. For today's discussion, and given the time that I have been allocated, I thought of bringing some global statistics, some of the interesting projects that at least I have been exposed to, and I hope the audience today will find it interesting. Hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
Okay. Great. So with that background, let me share some of the statistics that are coming out of the analyst report. And if you look at the left hand side of the chart, you will see that when we talk about industry 4.0, essentially there are 10 to 11 technologies that come together to solve a business problem. And whether it is predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, integrated supply chain, Internet of Things, and here the reference is to industrial Internet of Things, you will see that they are quite ahead in terms of maturity curve. And that's the reason I say that the topic of discussion is very relevant, because we are no more questioning the philosophy of IoT per se. We are looking at various kinds of use cases that are transforming the way operations are done. And if you look at the middle section, and this is a global statistics, automotive continues to be on the top. So they are the top adopters of technology globally, and then closely followed by chemical, pharmaceutical, industrial product. Now, since Industry 4.0 again has this 10 or 11 technologies that are in various stages of maturity, you will see that some of the technologies like AR, VR, or even artificial intelligence, these are still evolving. I mean, the industry does not have a fixed template or a real confidence when it comes to something that they have already achieved. But that's not the case with Internet of Things. So the early adopters, and that is again the report which you can Google. It is a PwC 2020 study, Industry 4.0 report, covering across the globe some 1,100 companies. It says that many of the early adopters have already started getting benefits, both on the revenue side as well as on the cost side. So it becomes a compelling reason for industry to adopt. And when it started, the drive for Internet of Things, it was mostly the CIO or CDO's agenda. But then as it progressed, the CFOs have also got interested, because anything or any kind of investment that we do on IoT actually has a direct impact on the bottom line of the company. So it is, many of the cases, it's also driven by the CFOs. There's a resurgence of IoT adoption in India, and pandemic has actually accelerated the digital adoption. Some of the sectors are again leaders: agri, manufacturing, pharma, logistics. Now, this report, which I'm sure if there is a study that is done today, mining and metals will also appear somewhere either in the middle or maybe on the top rung, let's say, adopters. Many of the mining companies, which also has metals as their value chain, are aggressively coming out with RFPs. The projects have already begun. I'm making reference of Coal India here, or NMDC, or multiple other Maharatnas who have started this adoption of Internet of Things. But what is that compelling reason which is actually pushing this digital transformation agenda? It's all about data. And I must make mention of this old age saying that in data, in God we trust, and rest everything bring data. It is so true when it comes to the data that is being read from the machine. And here the data that leads to intelligent analytics has to be unbiased, has to be autonomous, and everything actually boils down to IoT as an enabler. And that's the reason IoT has become an excellent choice for the companies who are in the starting phase for digital adoption. So as I promised, I will run a quick video. This is a project that we executed in Germany, and this comes from the chemical sector. So I'll just play this video. Atul, is the sound audible? Can you hear the audio?
Yeah, it's going fine.
Great.
Think about a chemical production plant. About complex production activities generating tons of data. Huge amount of data that is not standardized, not connected, and the value is not exploited. Now, think smart. Think of a new way of manufacturing, a smart one enabled by connected digital technologies. Think of a workforce supported by mobile technologies and empowered by access to data anywhere and anytime. We started to explore the potential of smart manufacturing by enabling predictive maintenance, which helps us detect and predict anomalies in our production assets, achieving higher reliability and reducing unplanned shutdowns. We are developing apps on mobile devices for plant operations, maintenance, and turnaround, enabling us to access key information and have better guidance throughout our work by augmented reality. We are connecting business planning into manufacturing operations for faster and better decision-making. Smart manufacturing will increase the effectiveness of BASF's assets as well as the efficiency of our manufacturing and engineering processes. In the future, our plants will be safer, more efficient, more flexible, and even more connected than ever. Think about a plant, a smart one. Our path is digital.
Well, so you saw this video. So so BASF is just a case in point. There are multiple manufacturing companies who are implementing Internet of Things, and also combined with AR/VR or artificial intelligence and machine learning. But then the whole objective is to increase the asset productivity, and also augment the plant reliability. So these were a couple of let's say the opportunities that were considered by BASF. But this runs across all companies that have multiple assets, which are being used 24/7. So IoT is one of the mechanism, first of all, to achieve connected environment, and then make meaningful use of data to see how the assets can be made more reliable, make predictive and prescriptive analytics, so that the age of the assets can actually be augmented, and overall the productivity increases. It's very unlike sector, and I was making mention of mining. Until about 2 to 3 years back, we saw that the mining sector probably was not quite keen on adopting digital. I mean, wherever we have gone and made presentation, they thought that it was ahead of time. Come 2020, the same companies have now started inviting us, and it seems like there is a sense of urgency. So this is a picture from a real mine, one of the largest mining companies in India. So you would all know that there are trucks, excavators, earth moving equipments that are continuously let's say excavating and moving materials from point A to point B. The efficiency or the productivity of any mining company is heavily dependent upon how these assets are utilized to the maximum possible extent. And so one of the aspects of implementing IoT and also large-scale digital here for a mining is fleet automation. And here we are talking about very advanced technology, where even the driver's facial expression gets tracked on a real-time basis. And then, like you have seen in aircraft's collision avoidance system, similarly, the pressure of the tires and its correlation with the fuel consumption. So around 20-25 parameters coming together and actually giving one particular value through machine learning that tells what is the health of that particular vehicle. And if there are, let's say, thousands of vehicles running, you can imagine how complex the algorithm is that is being run on near real-time basis, again connected back to the driver's hand phone, which is continuously passing instructions to him. Similarly, drone-based visual analytics of mine, this has become very, very common. This is not only applicable in mine, this is in oil and gas too, and also some large-scale construction projects. The other interesting development that has happened is autonomous quality control. And you will all agree that quality is a slightly controversial subject when it comes to mining sector. The company wanted fully automatic sampling and quality control process. And here again, the robotic arm picks up samples from the mine and passes through a visual analytics, automatic stamping of RFID tags, and then it goes to through conveyors. It goes to the laboratory information management system, which is again connected back to the SAP located 1,000 kilometers away in the headquarters. And this is all a cyclic kind of a implementation. And you can imagine how complex algorithms are being put to have real-time monitoring of mine exploration and quality control. And this essentially ties up well with the aspiration that our government, central government has put in increasing the throughput of mines to approximately 3 times. So all of these technologies coming together actually increases the throughput of the exploration process. Now, again, for any company which is starting its journey, one of the questions that that often we face is, why should we at all invest on technology, and what is the upside for me? As a thumb rule, these are some of the numbers that are proven by multiple implementations. Anywhere between 4 to 5% annually, both on the revenue as well as on the cost side, is something that that can be taken as a starting point. And of course, there are multiple riders that get associated with these numbers. For example, your current maturity level, what kind of implementation are you embarking upon? But this could be a food for thought. 4 to 5% annually, and over a period of 5 years, it becomes anywhere between 20 to 25%. Is something that becomes a compelling reason for industries to adopt IoT. Last but not the least, the technology is available. There are multiple platforms, there are multiple OEMs, and the ecosystem is full of solutions. But then the whole point is the right implementation of solution that is aligned with your business aspiration. So what we generally profess is it should not be a technology-led discussion. It should actually start from identifying your business aspiration and then stitching technology around it. The second learning again here is start small, learn, and then implement on a big bang scale. Third is Mr. Patwari talked about skill gap, the changes in the education system that should happen. This is a very valid point. And so we also profess that identify the skill gap that is required for smoothly running the future state of your enterprise. So identify the skill gap and also include more and more people from the ecosystem, from the enterprise, to be part of this journey. Last but not the least, and this was also made mentioned by Mr. Patwari, that cybersecurity is very important. And I must also underscore the fact that connectivity, and especially when we are working at a very remote site, connectivity has to be thought through. The entire architecture that we design right in the beginning should take into consideration how is the connectivity available. And there are various options. You talk about LoRaWAN, you talk about fiber optics, there are multiple options. And also cybersecurity as integral part of your enterprise architecture design. So with this, I'll just take a pause. I'm not sure if I have overstepped my time limit, but thank you for your patience, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Basu. In fact, business-led technology adoption is starting small, then talking about skill development and cybersecurity covers the entire gamut of things that an enterprise should look at while moving on the digital transformation journey. And we thank you for your presentation. Our next speaker is Dr. Ajay Data, who is chairman of FICCI Rajasthan Subcommittee on ITA and ITeS, and is also founder and CEO of Data Ingenious Global Limited. And Dr. Ajay Data is award-winning techno-commercial founder and CEO of multiple technology companies. His innovation and execution of software products like Bharat Sync, XGen Plus, SpamZoo, DataMail has got users world over and won multiple patents. Recently, XGen Technologies got global recognition for bringing first of its kind linguistic email address supporting email ID in Hindi, Gujarati, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, plus 8 more languages, making it more inclusive. And he has been investing in mentoring startups and very actively contributing to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. He is regularly thought leader on various platforms for entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. His recent product, Video Meet, got appreciated by Government of India. And in fact, during this entire journey of pandemic, he has contributed in many ways to the government also, when in the first phases of lockdown, how to issue passes, people can commute and all those things. So very actively working on various fronts. And he is managing director of Data Group of Industries and guiding startups, as I already mentioned. He is also got elected as chair of global organization Universal Acceptance Steering Group So with these words, we welcome you, and over to you, Dr. Data.
Thank you, Atul. Thank you for organizing this session, an important one because it has a very high level of potential. So let me take a step back. While my colleagues have spoken a lot about potential and what it can do, let me also paint the picture of IoT a little bit from the back. It's not a new thing. It's been 20 years since the invention of the term IoT. But let me tell you, we are yet to fulfill the vision. There's a dry definition of IoT. So what actually IoT is? So for the benefits of the audience, the dry definition of IoT is sensors and actuators embedded in physical objects that are linked through wired and wireless networks. I will repeat, this is a dry definition. Sensors and actuators embedded in physical objects that are linked through wired or wireless networks. To me, it doesn't really capture the potential of IoT. It's a very old definition. Smart homes, smart cities, Industry 4.0, autonomous vehicles, driverless cars, healthcare, and there are many other aspects of life which will benefit, which are getting benefited. That's what we mean from IoT. That's what we say today, IoT. IoT does not mean linked sensors object. Then what it is there a better name for it? This is something which the word is already contemplating, and we design something which is futuristic and new. It's not just new, it's just newer. As a concept, as I told, IoT is not new. Rolling back 40 years before, I just told 20 years before the IoT term was termed, but let us go more back, 40 years before. There were devices called telemetry, big, bulky, expensive compared to today. And computational devices capturing the simple data points and send them back for the analysis. They were 40 years before. They were right devices, they were used in ships and rockets. They were very large, so they could fit in these large objects there. Just to tell you, we were supposed to have approximately 250 million IoT devices in India in 2019. And there was a prediction that we are going to have almost 2 billion devices by 2022. Imagine the number of IoT devices around you in the whole country, where there is an average of more than one device per person, and we are likely to have those many devices around us. We don't even realize that's an IoT. To simply understand an example of IoT, if we look around, which are making a difference: elderly care monitoring, helmet crash sensors, RFID smart guns, tennis rackets, Wi-Fi based typewriters, memory sensors, smoke detectors, air quality sensors, and so forth, wherever the something can be sensed. But let me tell you, the train has left the station and we are stuck with the old term Internet of Things. There's nothing which we can do about it, but we can really emerge back from that days and make something much more powerful, much more realistic, which future needs today. If we see from the IoT devices, how their devices work, they are basically in the terms of functionality, have similarities in how they work related to the normal devices, but they require least manual intervention, no manpower requirement. They are like physical objects designed to interact with the real world in some way. The device might be a sensor or an assembly line or an intelligent security camera. In either of the case, the device is going to sense what's happening in the physical world. The device itself includes, obviously, if a device is going to work, it's supposed to include a little bit of CPU, little bit of network adapter, a firmware, and a software platform into this. In most cases, these devices will connect dynamically with a host control and where the server will go, and acquires an IP address where this data will be sent, and then the analytics will happen and the actions will take place. So if in most of the cases, these devices are directly accessible over the public internet, and that's the reason I'm focusing on public internet, because this is what I'm going to talk about, the risk part of it. Most of the devices are accessible over the public internet and designed to operate exclusively on private networks also. So let's see how these devices have helped us in Corona and how they could in future. Ma'am is also listening. So here's my idea. How do we use IoT devices? So let's paint a picture. Set up a camera in all the traffic prone areas. Traffic means the manpower traffic, the malls, the hospitals, the schools, the offices. Detect high temperature zone. These cameras can detect. Draw a heat map and inform the authorities automatically. So we need not to wait for somebody to fall sick, then go for a checking, then go for positive report, which takes another 4 days. And by that time, already the spread has happened. Could we stop by just seeing the heat map in that area and block that area and let's go one more step further. Try to capture the face from that camera, from the infrared scanning. If there is a suspicion found, send the pic of the person and the frame of the camera and the temperature to the command control center. And of course, the team is there to take an action, whatever action is desired. A simple example of an IoT working without the man in need. You do not to do anything. So what kind of sensors are available, commonly used? That's also very important to understand. So there are infrared thermal technology, which I just told you an example. Infrared thermometer, thermal imaging, body temperature measurement, IR sensor door and video operations, lift operations, power switch operations, water supply. All those things are enormously available at a very small cost. A sensor may cost you from 50 rupees to 1,000 rupees. It will not cost much from a sensor perspective. Building the device costs you more. So sensors can give you the data. Smart switches for smart watches for heart rate, blood pressure, optical camera for face recognition of the patient, IP camera, so on and so forth. There's a lot which could be done. IoT is an application specific, low power effective devices, we all know. So, but do we need to worry about it also? So I told you about the benefits. Do we need to really worry that what IoT device can do? So let us say a Pegasus case right now. Why mobile phones are required for the software? Because any software to damage or monitor, you require the host. You require some device to run that software. Imagine you have 2 billion devices running in the system. 2 billion devices are going to run in the country. Imagine that. So how it is going to support the security infrastructure for the country? Are we not sitting on a time bomb? Imagine if you said to me, for all of you, let's create a world where people sell really insecure products that can be used to attack the very basic fabric of the internet. Let's do that. I think most of the people would say, no, that's not probably a good idea. You should probably step in and do something to stop that kind of world that's going to create a security hole in the whole world. Digital weapons are being used internationally and nationally to inflict physical destruction or compromise privacy and essential services. Uran and Champion in the past wrote about it, that nothing the presumed Russian attacks on Ukraine power grid. I don't know the full story, but that's what I read in some book, that power grid of Ukraine was made down by Russian attack. And these are the devices which are compromised to get into the system. And I will end with my last note, the future. The future of IoT has the potential to be limitless. The word limitless is important here. The future of IoT has the potential to be limitless. Advances to the industrial internet will be accelerated and at unimaginable heights through increased network agility, integrated artificial intelligence, and the capacity to deploy, automate, orchestrate, and secure diverse use cases and the hyper scale in our world. Thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, Dr. Data. In fact, thank you for presenting opportunities as well as challenge as we move forward towards accelerated adoption of technology. And I'm sure that as we go and learn more and more about these devices, we will have a corresponding development in the security systems and architecture also in place. Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Mr. Shanmugam. He is Global Head Strategy and Business Development, IoT Businesses Unit at Tata Consultancy Services. In fact, he is responsible for developing the IoT business and leading the global IoT sales team, marketing and analyst relations, and developing strategic alliances and partnerships. He was also a core member of mergers and acquisitions team for Computational Research Laboratories, a high-performance computing services provider acquired by TCS in 2012. He is a leading voice of Internet of Things space and delivering keynote addresses as prominent industry events, and has published various works of thought leadership, including an article on realizing business value from Internet of Things. So over to you, Mr. Shanmugam.
Thank you very much. Are you able to hear me well?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. Please.
Very good. And I have requested Rahul to also bring up my presentation if possible.
Yeah, sure. You continue speaking, you will do that.
Thanks, first of all, thanks. And thanks for the participants also for joining this session. And thanks to FICCI for enabling this virtual webinar. Because I thought this is very important for the current situation, because I think as the other speakers talked about, you have a lot already happening or already talked about IoT and across the world. Today, if you type in IoT in Google, probably you will have endless pages and reports and use cases which has already been done by customers all over the world. So what is important is at the same time for us to reflect how it means impactful technology or impactful event for organizations individually. And that is where the difference comes in. I think everybody talks about trillions of devices going to get connected, etc., on all the reports. But if you look at it, the organizations level, right? And still the report says that only 24% of organizations have adopted IoT and has also taken beyond POC. That means they started using it in a scaled way. Still 76% of organizations are still in its either starting the phase or proof of technology or proof of concept phase. So that talks a lot, because we believe that, and that's what I thought I will bring some of the best practices, how it is working well for the global organizations as well as for some of our Indian customers as well. And there are some best practices to definitely everybody to have a look at it. Atul, just a check. I think in the window, I'm only seeing you.
No, we are able to see you. Not a problem.
Okay. Very good. So that's why I thought one is demystifying the potential of IoT. I would say that the potential of IoT, there is no issue. The potential is very big, and organizations are really able to transform themselves. Demystifying, because the way forward or how to really realize the potential within the organization is a question mark for many. Many have started proof of technologies or proof of concept. They are not able to move into a scalable phase, because the dimensions when you look at a POC versus the dimensions when you are thinking about a large scale implementation, it's completely different. So that is one of the reasons why many organizations at the CEO level, they say that this is what I want to do. I want to move to a services portfolio or a digital services I want to launch to our customers, or I want to create excellent customer service to my customers. Or in the COVID times, it has become very much important that how I can give utmost service for my assets on the field without sending the people into that, because of lockdown, we are not able to send field service engineers all over the world, right? So how will I ensure the customer satisfaction, and how will I ensure my assets on the field is not failing? And how will I ensure my operational efficiencies are improving beyond? How I can increase my flexibility beyond? So all these things were asked at the C-level executives. But when it comes to the ground level, there are difficulties because of plethora of technology availability choices for you to choose from. Number two, there is nobody actually, everybody talks about technology, but very few talks about how to achieve the results. So that's why I thought I will share some of the perspectives here. Yeah, next slide, Robert. So I call it like there are 4 key pillars that you need to really look at. Next slide, Robert. Yeah. Number 1 is your business value focus. That means that don't get into a technology evangelization phase. Technology is given. Today, there are enough proof points, there are enough players in the market, there are enough options in the market. So as a customer, as an organization, you should not worry much about which technology to pick. Instead, you should worry about what do I want to achieve? Because this is a transformative force. We believe that this is really bringing life to things, means that your devices or the sensors are going to talk, or they can be enabled to control themselves. Then the amount of inefficiency you can remove from the system is huge. And the possibilities for you to reimagine yourself is huge. So then you to think about what do you want to achieve, and even as a one function, what do you want to achieve as your business value, or what do you want to achieve as a whole, as an organization, or how you want to transform yourself. So that should be the core focus for the organization before even you venture into IoT. And number 2 is, it is not a pure IT play or a digital play or a business play or only a service engineers play. It is not single siloed function. It is a transformative force which will cut across all. So even if you're thinking about service transformation, you need to involve your engineering team, IT team, digital team, as well as the services team, so that it is a multi-stakeholders gets involved and structure this. So you will be able to bring in a value which was not seen by your customer, or bring in a value which was not seen by your plant or a warehouse or your logistics teams. So it is important to bring in multi-stakeholders to be involved from day one. And a very important one is, like, you need a structured roadmap for your functions, across the functions as well as for the organization, to really achieve that business value that you're setting for. So go to the next slide. So let me talk a bit about what is the structured roadmap, what I mean. Because as I told about, it is about not just connecting or collecting the data from the devices. Now we need to think about how these devices can have a life on its own, how these devices will be able to control or will be able to emit the data to the next layer, so that the organization can get much more value. Because real-time information-based decision making was never there. That capability was never there in the organization. So today, with that, what kind of newer skills or newer capabilities that you as an organization you can gain for different functions? So we believe that it is a possibility for you to think boundaryless. Means that because irrespective of assets on the field or on the move, etc., you will be able to control beyond your organizational boundaries. So it gives you a power to be boundaryless as an organization. Number 2, you are able to make the decision making pervasive. That means that from the device layer till your management layer, every layer different decisions can be made, because the data flows and the controls and the decisions can be left to the devices on the ground at the edge level, as well as move to the cloud and all across. So, and you can bring rich experience for yourself, your customers, as well as for your internal stakeholders. So if you reimagine yourself in a different way, then the possibilities are humongous. You can get into that seamless customer experience, as I talked about, and sustainable, because I think now every organization today talks about zero carbon footprint or carbon neutral, etc. You will be able to reach that very quickly. And your organization can be having agility across efficiencies. Doesn't need to be 1% improvement. Today you can go multifold. So we say that responding to the physical context with the digital intelligence will help you to unlock the exponential value. Let's see how. Yeah, next slide, please. So I have just taken one industry for representation, the manufacturing industry. And as we know that it has a production function or a supply chain or a customer service or different functions, right? And you need to approach it in a structured way, means that in 3 phases. Connect in context. So you just connecting devices across from a different context. What is the value is possible in production by ability to remotely monitor my devices? What is that art of possible for me? I will be able to have the visibility, move from scheduled maintenance into the preventive maintenance, etc. And move further with respect, if I talk about supply chain, I will be able to know all the devices availability, all the truck availability, and effectively utilize and reduce that empty loads trucks, which will be one of the pain points in the logistics functions. And similarly, on the customer service, how will I able to remotely connect and drive that customer experience further? This is just by connecting context. Move to the next layer, which is leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques, whereby you will be able to bring, again, next set of value. So the same assets which you are connected, now you can move into the digital twin of an asset. And similarly, same logistics, trucks, as well as the routing algorithms that you have put on top of it. Now you will be able to not only reduce the empty loads of the trucks, ensure on-time availability, ensure the availability of the trucks and the compliance regulations, everything in a very quick manner. And similarly on the customer service, evolve it before the customer complains to you, you will be able to solve the problems through predictive maintenance. And altogether, when it moves into self-aware status, actually now you can think about autonomous supply chain systems or autonomous warehouse systems or your lighthouse warehouses or even your manufacturing lines can be thought about autonomous way about the future. So this is the journey where you can evolve by connecting what is the business value I can get, by adding predictive layer on top of it, what is the business value I can achieve, and then move towards the future whereby completely the organization and silos between the organization disappear and you become much more powerful and much more transformational organization of the future. Yeah, next please. So there are lots of use cases I can talk about. We have been working with mining organizations in India as well as in resources, energy and manufacturing or consumer product groups and lots of organizations and even travel and transportation. So the technology, I want to say the technology is available for all the scenarios today. And it is evolving way and way above. And the technology is actually moving a little faster than the business adoption. And businesses today don't need to wait for or don't need to worry about the technology choices. There are partners who can help you to make it. So I want you to think about dream big and worry about what is the art of possible for us and what do we need to achieve in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year timeline. And whatever you start, aim for within 12 months to 18 months, you get the returns of it so that it becomes a self-funding model on a continuous way. So you start some use cases, get the results, invest into the next layer and next phases. So across the organization, you bring that powerful force, which helps you to transform. So very, very important one for that is really discovering the value which is worth investing for you. So that is what we call it as value discovery phase. So before the technology, focus on the value discovery phase, whereby what is worth solving for the organization, what will create a meaningful impact for the organization for its long-term sustainability, and focus on that. So focus on identifying that with the involvement of right stakeholders and crystallizing that into a business case so that itself becomes a clear case for the organization to adopt it. And then that sets the roadmap, what I talked about in the earlier slide, whereby you will be able to discover the value, then focus and realize the value in a structured way, then go ahead and optimize it further. So I think this is a quick 3 sliders. I just want to share what is needed for organizations to really adopt and to really achieve the business value and really transform, irrespective of the organizations of the size. The technology is available today, so not to worry about the technology. Let's dream big. And here is a chance for all our Indian organizations also to dream big and really take over the world. So thanks a lot, FICCI, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Shanmugam. In fact, thank you for the impetus on the value part of the business from dreaming big to optimization. And I'm sure as we proceed, more and more enterprises will adopt technology, and the percentage that you shared, 24%, will be much higher whenever we sit again for the 4th edition of this program. And now we have with us our keynote speaker, Ms. Mugdha Sinha, Secretary, Science and Technology, Government of Rajasthan. In fact, she is a 1999 batch IAS officer, presently Secretary Science and Technology, also Secretary for Art, Literature, Culture and Archaeology, and also Director General for Jawahar Kala Kendra. Previously, she has worked as Secretary Food and Civil Supplies, Commissioner for Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, and Managing Director for Rajasthan State Investment Development, Industrial Development and Investment Corporation Limited, Director in Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Textiles, Officer on Special Duty to Honorable Textile Ministers, and Collector and District Magistrate at Shri Ganganagar, Jhunjhunu, Hanumangarh, Bundi, and various other positions with Government of Rajasthan. She is MPhil in International Diplomacy, Master of Arts in International Relations, and Bachelor of Arts in History. So, welcome you, ma'am, and look forward to hear from you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Atul and FICCI, for this opportunity, and my compliments to all my fellow colleagues who have spoken before me and give us an insight into industry developments in the field of IoT. So as many of you have already said, I will not delve into what exactly IoT means, but just for the benefit of everybody who is on board this platform today and listening to this webinar. If you recall vending machines, you go to an airport and you have vending machines and you are able to put a coin or some kind of money, or just maybe with your SBI smart card, just swap the card and you are able to get whatever item of purchase that you want. So that is IoT in action, right? And today, what is the reason? Why do we need IoT? I mean, because I am in the government and my job is, I have two kinds of stakeholders. One, of course, is the industry, the manufacturing industry mainly, and also the consumers at, the consumption end, or clients who are going to be using this kind of technology. And as a government official in charge of policy making, what is my role? My role is to provide a level playing field for the industry so that the consumers are able to get optimized benefit of new technology. And also my second very important role is to be able to anticipate what is the future going to be for the citizens. Because this IoT thing has been there since 1982 when the first Coca-Cola vending machine came into being. That's how embedded IoT has been. If you look around you, all your Fitbits and your pedometers, your smartphones, and so many people have already mentioned and given so many examples, so many medical devices today, your Holter test, your sleep apnea test, all these kind of tests are actually nothing but IoT in action. Because what is IoT? IoT is, in my understanding, a triangle. It is a triangle of technology, a process which this technology uses, and the people that it benefits. So this is a triangle. So people, process, and technology. That is how IoT comes into the being. While we are very much focused on the technology part, and technology part, what is at the back end of technology? Most of you have already mentioned there is ubiquitous computing, there is artificial intelligence, there's M2M. So all those kind of things, there's algorithm data, there is data analytics, all of which come under the ambit of technology. And people, of course, are either your industry clients or are the citizens of this country who are also consumers at some point in time. But, we do not focus on the process. The role of the government is in the process. Today, what I heard from everybody is more on the industry side. I would have been very happy if some of you would have told me, ma'am, this is our expectation from the government. Because, in all kind of technological fields today, what is happening is that there is a classic case of a chicken and an egg. What comes pehle? What comes first? Whether the chicken comes first or the egg comes first. There is this thing. Because what has happened is if you are talking of IoT, and I know I'm talking at the 3rd edition of IoT Summit, IoT has been there since 1982, right? The coinage, in fact, came much later. The coinage of Internet of Things came much later, but with the first Coca-Cola vending machine, IoT was already there. Today, IoT is so embedded in our lives, but we do not have a policy. So the aim of the government, I feel, and the industry working with the government is first to understand the philosophy. Because what will enable all of you, the industry people, to work in close tandem with the government is if you're able to make the government see the importance of coming up with a philosophy. I'll tell you why this is important. It is important because otherwise we will be only copy pasting certain, the canvas of IoT is huge, but we only know very little things. A person who's working in the medical industry will know that much of the medical industry IoT, and it is an integrated field. Right, it is not something that a person in the medical devices will not need somebody in the mathematical or computing field, somebody in the quantum analysis, somebody in the algorithm. So all these things are connected, and that is why you will need multidisciplinary teams. My own understanding, and I might be wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected because all of you have deep understanding of this field. My understanding is that we must first come up with, why do we need IoT in the government? Or rather, why do we need to emphasize IoT through the government? My own understanding is, why do we need IoT is for the simple reason, two things. And I don't want to have a huge list, just two very simple objects that we need to have. One, IoT has become very embedded in our lives. So we need IoT for saving lives. Second reason is we need IoT for preventing damage. So one is a positive affirmation. The second is a preventable kind of an affirmation. So we need both. If you look at the IoMT, which is the Internet of Medical Things, and they're you can, from medical things, you can move to sports things, and you can move to, it's almost like technical textiles, which have 16 different kinds of genre. So also in Internet of Things, you have many verticals, right? And I think all these verticals work on the same premise. When you look at the field of Internet of Medical Devices, right? Just taking one example, because we are talking in COVID era, I could extrapolate in other departments. Let's take up the medical department in government of Rajasthan, or for that matter, anywhere, and see how IoT can be actually used in in a most commonsensical manner, because I think governance is not just about smart governance, but also about common sense. What does IoT do? I have been hearing of IoT that you will have next generation fridge, which will tell you the kind of food that you have in the fridge and the kind of quantities that are getting depleted and that will need replenishment. And the IoT, the machines will talk to each other. And if you feed in a grocery number, or say an Amazon number, working through the IoT, the moment the bread or the milk or the cheese or the butter in your fridge goes down, through the IoT, the grocer will get a message saying that Mugdha's fridge is depleted of 2 multigrain breads, 1 Amul butter, 1 Britannia cheese, and an order will automatically be placed in the Amazon cart and the delivery will get home delivered. So the machines are talking to each other based on artificial intelligence, based on predictive science. I'm not just asking you to think about this. If it can happen in a fridge, this kind of proper usage, niche use in each department. What today we are doing in the government is we get enamored by one kind of technology and say, okay, let's do it across the departments. We get one letter saying this has to be done across all departments without understanding the department. Like I may not have understanding of each and every industry unless I gain some knowledge, sit with each industry. Similarly, the service providers who provide the IoT interventions may not have understanding of all the departments, right? And this is something I'm talking of personal experience, because when I was in the food department and I used data analytics on a huge manner, which incidentally nobody has been able to change for the last 4 years now. So I feel happy that something that got seeded in my time continues as it is till date, which uses a lot of data analytics. So what we can do, to give you 2 examples to prove my point, to validate my point, what we can do is we need to develop, sit with each department and figure out what is an area, what is a niche use in the department where IoT can be used in the most commonsensical manner. Now we are talking of the medical department, because I said we'll take that department. So how can you use the fridge example in the medical department? What you can probably do is that in all hospitals or wherever you have stores, right, you can use IoT to tell you which kind of medicines are available, which kinds of medicines are getting depleted, which kind of medicines are getting put on prescription, and are getting issued to patients. So you can have, based on this predictive analysis and IoT, orders can be placed to 10 crores. This is like, it's like a no-brainer. So stores will become, heavy usage of IoT will happen in all your stores. So wherever you have stores, wherever you have inspections, so in fact, you can actually wind up the inspection department, because you will have data coming through, which will be real-time data. So that is one thing. If you look at if you look at my own department, because if I talk of other departments, you will say, hey, talk about your department. So if you look at my department of, say, art and culture, we are today doing a lot of digitization, scanning and microfilming of old manuscripts which Rajasthan has. And we have those in our Sanskrit Academy, we have it in APRI, we have it in the Bikaner archives. Just look at what IoT can do. IoT can open up an entire resource of information which is like centuries old to the public just by using IoT, right? And we are just still stuck at scanning, digitization and microfilming, and we have not moved beyond that and using artificial intelligence and predictive intelligence. You can figure out in my JKK library, if I use IoT, I can figure out what are the latest books in the subject, what books I have, what books can be. So you don't actually need committees of people to sit. IoT will tell you that, okay, self-help, these are the books latest in the market, these are the winners of whatever prizes, these are the books by Nobel laureates on this subject, this is what you have, this is what you can buy, this is what the budget will be. And in auto mode, you can do so much. So your replenishments can happen in a very, very predictive sense. They can also tell you what books are supposed to come out in the market, and so much more. So much more can happen. So that is my small understanding. But also today what is happening, one very important point, because there is always an underside of technology, and we must be very, very wary of that. So I think the simplest starting point for all departments and for everybody who is here in the industry who wants to actually work in the government, because your main business comes from the government. But if you're not able to tell the government where to give you business, there will always be this conflict. So we have to figure out an entry point. The entry point is that your people who come to meet us should ask us, these are the solutions we have. Where do you think we can apply these solutions? And I think you will figure out that governments who are making policy in this field should look at niche usage, like we did for the drone system, where we figure out, because once you have a niche use in place for each department, then you can work out the specifications, then you can embed those specifications in the tender, and that is how the government system will become seamless, and that is how you will get integrated into the system, and that is how the citizenry at large will benefit from the system. So my two bits about, somebody also mentioned RIFDs. When there was this whole cache of medicines which were to be exported to South African countries, because there was a counterfeit happening, and they had to be segregated from contraband and counterfeit medicines. RIFDs were used in a big way to ensure that counterfeit medicines actually did not, or in the transaction, in the transit, the medicines did not get changed. So IoT has actually been there and being employed internationally in trade, in trading all over the country, any which ways. But what is now important is to keep in mind two things. See, today, governments and industry, service providers are, accessing a lot of information. Today, my information, even as I speak today, with so much, technological advancements happening, you are recording a session on a platform, my voice has been recorded, right? I have given so many lectures with FICCI. So, how I pronounce an A, how I pronounce an E, how I do consonants, everything is recorded. And today you have this Israeli technology which can actually make a dead man speak. So, there's this phrase in English, you are putting words into my mouth. So tomorrow, actually, you will be putting words using that technology into people's mouth and making them speak what they probably never even imagined or never spoke. So that is how dangerous technology can be. Using my experience from food, I can tell you something, that we had about 4.50 crore people, which is 45 million users of the National Food Security, the National Food Security beneficiaries, basically. we had about 29,000 Russian dealers, right? That was the quantum. And 365 days, every minute a POS machine was beeping somewhere, and some kind of data about 3 or 4 different quantities, wheat, sugar, pulses, was all getting transmitted in the system, right? And it was available to everybody to see because you had an app by just by entering your Russian number or your consumer number, you could figure out what was happening in the entire chain. But unfortunately, because government, one department of the government, is dealing with 4.5 into 29,000 into 365 into 24 hours, that kind of voluminous information is what we are dealing with. We are not being able to analyze various aspects. If I just tell you in food, there are at least 52 points which can be analyzed. When did the shop open? So you will do that shop opening across 29,000 shops. When did the shop give its first ration? Did the shop open on a Sunday and give it to somebody when it was not authorized? You go like this. And you will find that there is no end to data analytics. I could not even reach in my 2 years in the food department to blockchain because there was so much of analysis that needed to be done. And you need people who are trained in data analytics, who can understand, secretaries who can understand how to use the data that is being collected. Today, in the COVID, I personally have got so many RT-PCR tests done, so many blood tests done. My bio-health informatics or my health informatics, right from the time when my job asked me to start getting that annual medical checks done. But nobody is looking at my chart and telling me, okay, here, Mugdha, as a patient, you started doing these tests when you were 40. Today you are an X age. And this is the graph, just like you have an income tax where you study money, nobody is studying your health. That is the job of IoT to do. Each one in the future, because the health will be so important, will need bioinformatic professionals, just like you have a CA today, because your health is wealth. So that is where IoT needs to come into the picture. That is where data analytics needed to come into the picture. Also, policymakers and industries both are collecting so much of information, you really don't know how to generate value out of all the information. I can tell you that we are generating value out of only 1% of the information that we are collecting. We are making money, but not value out of, because somebody I think mentioned, I don't know who it was, but I heard somebody talk about creating value, I think from TCS. You are right now making revenue out of data, but you are not enabling data to speak for itself and add value to the economy. That is not happening, and that is what IoT and data analytics has the power to do. The second thing is, when I think Mr. Tata spoke about having cameras everywhere, I would really urge you to read this book by Joseph Campner. This came out in the early 90s. It's called Freedom for Sale, right? It speaks about exactly this, and it talks about 9 countries, including Singapore, UK being the most highly surveillanced country in the world. It talks of Russia and talks of India, it talks of China. And you will figure from there that, the surveillance that we are doing. Today, I can tell you, and you guys can prove me wrong. Today, if any of your devices are on means if they're switched off, right? And you've not done them, but your battery is there, right? And it's fully charged. Everything that you do in your personal life can still be seen by people. That is the kind of technology that you have by people sitting anywhere in the world. So if you've read Mindfuck by Christopher Wiley, you'll understand that when he was being pursued by intelligence agencies, he would take out the battery from all his devices so that they could not figure out his location where he was. So that is the power of devices, because even if you shut your device, the wireless that is working, the wireless system that is working, the energy that is getting transmitted, it's still alive and on. And it can detect a whole lot of signals. So life is all about signals today. So I think IoT, one has to be very, very careful. We need to have very strong systems of what data we want, what kind of privacy firewalls we should have in collecting data. You should only collect data that actually you can convert into some value for the citizens from whom you are collecting this data. If you are not doing it, if you are doing it based on fear that maybe someday in the future we'll need it, every single day millions of data is being collected everywhere in the world, but we are not able to translate it into something very, very useful. So those are my two, security and privacy are my two very, very serious concerns, because ultimately you cannot trade off economic gains for liberty. That will remain very, very essential in times to come, because if you are not free, what will you do with everything that you have created? And if you're not healthy, what will you do with all the wealth and value that you have generated in the system? And also I think integration, like everybody is today using Fitbits. Most of us use Fitbits or pedometers or the Apple heart devices and figure out how we are doing. But just look at it. When you go to a physician, the data which comes from your Fitbit doesn't get integrated with your annual checkups, with how the doctor perceives it. All that is not happening. Also, using deep medicine, can we free the time of the doctor to look at the patient rather than so many bundle of reports that the doctor is so preoccupied looking? When you go to a doctor, he barely, because he has so many people to serve, he barely has time for you to do analysis, to check what you eat, how you feel, because he has so many reports to see and so much of churning that goes on his head. So I think somewhere in policy making thinking, we have to look at where we can use system one, intuitive thinking, and where we can use system two, deliberate, based on data thinking. I think that is going to be the crux of how the policy makers, the government and the industry can work together for the benefit, because we both have common stakeholders. I call my common stakeholders citizens, because we follow the Gandhi's talisman, and you call the same stakeholders clients, because they pay user fee to you, and we do everything as part of a welfare understanding of governance. But the people are the same. So while Mugdha can be your client, for the government, Mugdha will be a citizen with core citizen values. So that is how I see, and I'm extremely glad that FICCI is continuing to emphasize on the Internet of Things. And in Rajasthan, I can tell you, this is an area that will really, really need to come together if Rajasthan, because we are already doing a lot. It's like the kings, they do conquest and then they do consolidation, right? So we've done a lot of conquest in various areas, and medical health has really got the government's prime attention and also financial attention. But now is the time, I think, to consolidate and put it out in the public for a proper consumption by the public of what all government is doing and how it is going to benefit the citizenry of this state. So thank you very much, Atulji, and thank you very much, everyone, for also provoking me into thinking of how I understand IoT from the government's perspective, and extremely grateful for this opportunity. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for bringing a fresh perspective to the entire discussion and bringing the human element at the center stage. And as mentioned, you always bring new thoughts, new ideas, new action points to the discussion. So happy to have you amongst us. And now I would request Mr. Bimal Patwari to quickly sum up the session so that we start with the first plenary session. Over to you, Mr. Patwari.
Thank you, Atulji. I think this is one of the best inaugural sessions I have attended in a long time. What everybody spoke today was really nice, and the good thing is that everyone's brought their own perspective of different industries and the society that they're working in. Mugdha ma'am, I think your presentations was really nice. You brought up such beautiful examples of how our daily life can be changed, both in the positive sense, and also how can we stop those negative incidents by using the technology. And the several examples that you gave were really very interesting and thought-provoking. And I'm sure every attendee will think through it, the industry balance that we have today. They all will think. I think Mr. Ankur Basu really talked about the use of the IoT in industry and how they are revolutionizing the industry. Dr. Datta gave some very practical examples of the use. and Mr. Raja Shanmugam, he also gave a nice framework that how the IoT devices can be actually implemented in a very organized and effective manner. So thank you everyone for this very thoughtful session. Thank you, FICCI, for organizing this. And we hope that the next continuing plenary session will be very effective and useful to all of us. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Patwari. And with this, we come to the close of the inaugural session, and we will start with the next plenary session, Emerging Trends of IoT. And I would introduce and hand over the baton to the session chairman, Mr. Anuj Bindal. He comes with 25 plus years of rich experience in sales and marketing, consulting services, customer services, and new business development in diversified industries, including IT, product and service, insurance, and real estate. He is currently working as head of sales and marketing at Mahindra World City Jaipur Limited, a subsidiary of Mahindra Lifespace Developers Limited. He is a career B2B business development and client servicing specialist. He has championed and co-led multiple opportunities for Make in India, collaborating closely with industry think tanks in various capacities. So over to you, Mr. Bindal.
Thank you, Atul, for that elaborate introduction. So, good morning, everyone, my fellow speakers, guests, and welcome to an interesting session packed with experts from industry to talk about emerging trends of IoT. I would like to also thank FICCI Rajasthan for giving this opportunity to chair the important session and in organizing such a relevant session which touches everybody's life. I would also like to thank my fellow speakers on behalf of FICCI and myself as a session chair to find time to join us here. Let me simplify IoT, because IoT is something like Mugdha ma'am said, and the speakers in the inaugural session talked about, it touches everybody's life. So in a common man, simplifying it refers to anything that is outfitted with sensor technology, which allows them to exchange data with other devices that are also connected to internet. Maybe it is a refrigerator talking to a grocery store or any other information. If technology continues at the pace that currently is, we expect almost 30 billion IoT devices connected on internet by year 2025. In last 20 months, we all have witnessed pandemic situation like never before. By virtue of COVID-19, this has been one of the biggest disruptor. The way we think, the way we work, the way we live, our lives, and the way we engage with technology and devices. The future of IoT may play a bigger role in security since people are working from home. More security will be needed for devices that have access to financial and important data. Phones and computers that are logged onto company servers will be primary targets of hackers, ransomware threats, viruses. We will be forced to ensure that devices are secure and use of IoT technology to make sure that no devices are compromised. Cities and workspaces need to be IoT enabled, providing information at touch of a button and as well as safe environment. Having said that, in my view, there are top 10 technology trends which may emerge in 2021, which would be machine learning, collaborating with artificial intelligence, edge computing, manufacturing and agriculture, transport and supply chain, energy building, smart cities, healthcare and wearables, security and data regulation, smart home, customer assistance, blockchain, 5G connectivity. With this as a context, I would like to invite our first eminent speaker, Mr. Pavankumar. Mr. Pavankumar is a director and a chief expert in product management at SAP Labs India. He is expert with industrial IoT product management at SAP. He is a seasoned product management professional focused on product strategy definition, go-to-market activities, having an extensive experience for more than 15 years in building products and working with global customers in emerging and developed markets. His expertise in the areas of IoT, edge computing and sustainability and analytics can be a great insight for us. Over to you, Mr. Pavankumar.
Yeah, thank you, Anuj. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you, FICCI, for inviting me to this. Hope you can hear me clearly and you can see my screen, right?
Yes, all good. Please go ahead.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, I framed this title of the session as IoT is a new IT. I mean, let me explain what does it mean by. So every business or an organization or universities, wherever, right, we have IT landscapes, and these IT landscapes cater to multiple of the business processes, maybe attendance to time recording or travel booking to settlements or procurement to replenishment or servicing, marketing, whatever, right? Now with connected devices, right, IoT signals are getting embedded into these processes, and these processes are turning much more intelligent, intuitive, and interconnected. Yeah. So this way, I see IT landscapes of the organizations are evolving towards to be the IoT landscapes. Yeah. Now, before getting into before getting into the some of the customer examples I would like to share with you, let me just quickly touch upon how I classify IoT in terms of end user segments. Yeah, because IoT is being perceived differently by different individuals. Some of them they claim Fitbit as IoT, some of them they claim smart city as IoT or smart factory as IoT, right? So if I need to classify them based on the diverse use cases that are available based on the end user segments, I classify them as consumer IoT and enterprise IoT. Okay, and enterprise IoT, again, I slightly draw a line between commercial IoT and industrial IoT. Yeah. Now, consumer IoT, we all know it's an example of your Fitbit or a smartwatch or smart home example, where the IoT is catered to an individual user. Now, coming to the other extreme where you have industrial IoT, it's all about, factory automation or a smart grid or a smart factory, etc. An example would be, a smart state-of-art facility in Pennsylvania by Harley Davidson, where they produce 1,700 plus different bike variants on a single production line. So this is an example of a smart manufacturing, right? This comes under industrial IoT. Now let's look at commercial IoT, slightly different. Now in this case, IoT is applied to commercial scenario to a group of users, not an individual user, not to industrial users, but a group of users in a commercial sense. Let me take a very simple example which we can relate easily, right? Imagine that you are on a long drive and you stopped at a fuel station. Okay, now as you refill the fuel in your car, the fuel pump could connect with your car dashboard system, and the retailer will offer you maybe an offer on the soda or a snack or a car cleaner, and the offer gets displayed in the dashboard. Yeah. Now the retailer is talking to you, right? Now, based on the sensor data coming from the car, your car manufacturer will predict when the issue can come up with the car and upfront inform you, to drop your car at a nearby service station. Now, manufacturer of the car is talking to you. Now, finally, based on the good driving habit of yours, right? I mean, not just based on your car model and make or year of the manufacturer and all, but based on the good driving habit, which has been captured via the sensor data from the car, your insurance provider is trying to provide a reduced premium amount for you. Now, insurer is talking to you. So in this case, in all these risk scenarios, retailer, manufacturer, and insurer are talking to a group of users with a commercial boundary. So this is where I call it as a commercial IoT. Now let's look at some of the examples where enterprises leverage IoT and how they deliver value to their customers and their customers. Yeah. Now, firstly, companies leverage IoT to improve their bottom line by automating and accelerating their business processes based on the sensor data. In a simple words, I can say process optimization or productivity improvement. Right? I mean, process optimization for a step change in the productivity. This is what I can claim. Let me take an example, a very live example and a simple example to correlate as well. It's if I'm taking an example of a company who manufactures or produce artificial food flavors like your strawberry flavor or a mango flavor, what you see in food ingredient, right? Now, while producing that, they need a lot of raw materials. One among them is sugar, and the sugar, as you can see, it's been getting supplied from their suppliers. Now they process this sugar with the fruit ingredients to produce the fruit products. Now what do? They put this particular product, the strawberry jam or strawberry flavor, onto a containers and then ship it to their customers. Now their customers are going to, further process it by mixing with, a cola and make a strawberry flavored drink, or, they mix it with curd and make strawberry flavored curd and sell it to their end customers. So when you look at this entire business scenario, right, what is important is to have right ingredients or raw materials at right time, at right quantity, so that this entire chain doesn't stop anywhere. Right? This is one of the key points. Right now, what we are doing is the sensors are getting embedded into, if you observe in this example, the assets here are the physical devices, the things here are silos and containers, silos carrying sugar and containers carrying the strawberry jam, right? Now, sensors are attached to these receptacles, and that measure the real-time inventory levels of the material or the product in that particular container. Now, based on the fill level, the quantity available, and based on the calculated consumption rate, how quick am I consuming, right? That is being calculated, right? And now business systems has a supplier data. Not just the supplier data, but also how much lead time they take to supply the raw material like sugar. Now, using this information, IoT system can automatically trigger the replenishment process based on the predefined business data. So if you look at it, right, we are kind of making this replenishment process intelligent by embedding the IoT data. Not just that, right? Sometimes this is an edible, right? The strawberry jam or strawberry flavor is an edible, but typically the expiry date is based on the manufacture date. That is being printed on the somewhere on the product now, but that doesn't work that way. If the storage conditions of the product is not maintained well, the expiry date have to be changed. Like as if you don't consume the milk, or if you don't keep the milk in the refrigerator, you have to consume it quick, right? In a similar way, if this particular material is not maintained at right storage conditions like temperature or whatever, right? This will expire soon, and dynamically this company wanted to adjust the expiry date based on the storage conditions. Now, in this case, what are we doing? In this case, the replenishment process is getting IoTized, the track and trace, the movement of the containers is getting IoTized, the storage conditions, the expiry date is, the process is getting IoTized, right? So this way, and this example, what I took live example is with this particular food company, but this is true for a chemical manufacturer or a drug manufacturer and many other cases where raw material replenishment is key. So net to net here, I would like to conclude that situational awareness based on the data coming from the business systems correlated with IoT data will help you to improve the overall productivity. Now, in today's world, it's not only about productivity. In the earlier case, we understood IoT improves productivity, but in today's world, productivity itself is not important, right? We live in an experience economy, and in the end, it's all about customer experience. Now, let's look at how IoT is enabling certain business processes which can elevate the customer experience. Yeah. Now, if we look at some of the companies, right, who owns big assets, be it, say, imagine you are a manufacturer of a heating or a cooling machines or a vending machines or anything, right? What your customers rely on? They rely on the uptime and availability of your machine. They rely on the quality of the product that machine produce, and they rely on the service you provide in case the machine gets sick, right? So now how I would help here is, well, imagine all these connected machines, right, embedded with sensors, provides the data to the manufacturer of the machines. Whenever an issue, based on the sensor data, whenever an issue has been encountered, the IoT system can automatically create a service request and identify the service technician who can look into it. Yeah, not just that, based on the pattern of the sensor data, the health of the machine, the system also can figure out what issue or is there any additional spare part is needed, and then automatically do an order in the backend system, the backend ERP system. Not just that, now the field technician will go to the customer place to fix the issue with already known problem, right? The problem is known, the resolution is known, this guy will go and fix it there. Imagine your inverter battery at your home. Someone comes to you and knock the door and say, hey, you know what? Your battery will die in under 5 days. And I know the root cause. This is what it is. Don't you feel good about it with the experience? Exactly. So in this way, the IoT is increasing the quality of service in a way the customer experience is getting increased. Yeah, because the companies, the manufacturer of these assets are being proactive than reactive. Okay. Now, we have seen two different ways, right? Now, many times these enterprises adopt IoT for improving productivity. We have seen that. And then they also try to work on to improve the customer experience. Now, while doing that, they get a lot of IoT data from the asset as well as the usage data as well, right? Now, what we observed is this is resulting in new business models as well. Companies are ending up with new business models, such as product as a service, right? I'll take an example here. One of the air purifier company won a bid with the government outside of India, and then they started putting their smart air purifiers in the public places, especially the schools. They have automated, I mean, they have put this IoT enabled air purifier so that, they can provide a real-time report to the government on the air purification process. So they wanted to improve the productivity here. Then what they thought is, why can't I, also provide additional services via mobile app and give these air purifier to end customers, home customers. In those apps, what they do is they kind of provide services like what is the air quality in the room. I mean, what sort of, when is the filter is due for a replacement and all. Such kind of information is getting provided to the end users. Now here they again were able to increase the customer experience. And finally, they thought, why can't we launch purified air itself as a service, right? Purified air itself as a service, so that the end consumers no need to buy the air purifier, rather they buy based on the purified air, right? So this is where they ended up finally. So net to net, they started with improving productivity. They were able to improve the customer experience, and then finally they were able to sell the service instead of a product. And this is not just air purifier, but also we observed that with the water purifier, purified water as a service in India, one of the companies started that way. And also many other places where we are seeing drilling hole as a service like that. Many of these bigger asset companies, they're getting into this kind of a business here. Now, moving on to the next one, finally, right? I mean, the companies are also looking at how can they extend the business process to edge, right? And we know edge computing. Edge computing is like a complements IoT, so that IoT deployments will be scaled with edge computing, right? The key drivers of the edge computing are, as we know, the latent response, the intermittent connectivity, and the communication cost when you try to push all the data to the cloud for the processing. Now, to answer all these challenges, right, we need to make the edge. The edge means the edge location more autonomous and more intelligent, right? And we need not only the capabilities to locally store and analyze the data, but also sometimes we need to bring the business data also to locally, to the edge location. Not the entire data of the business, like ERP data, we don't want to bring entirety over here. Rather, a mini ERP data should be here at the edge location so that the edge can run automatically, yeah? And this is where we see companies are adopting edge computing in the enterprise world. Let me again take an example, real-time example, where an European shipping company has a fleet of 250 shipping vessels, yeah, and they have more than 5,000 shippers. And their ship will be on voyage for, I would say, close to 8 months or more than 8 months to 10 months. So what happens in the ship is the satellite connectivity, whatever is available, is expensive as well as intermittent in the middle of the ocean, right? And also the connectivity is primarily used for critical vessel operations. It's not that it is being used for other operations, right? I mean, it's been reserved for the critical operations. Now, the problem is during the voyage, the crew members need to purchase a lot of bonded materials on the ship, as well as they need to do some purchase transactions when the ship goes to a nearby shore. Okay. Now, when I say bonded materials, they are something like your telecom cards or medications or ropes or vessel repair stuff and all that. Yeah. Now, so what we observe here is there are certain business processes need to be executed within the ship to continue the business while the ship is in the middle of the ocean when there is no connectivity. For example, inventory management or factoring in the currency rate fluctuations for cash advances, or for the real-time issuing of pay slips for disembarking crew members, etc., right? So by extending the business process to the edge location, what I mean by is get the needed business data, ERP data to the edge location and buffer it here for whatever is needed. And you continue the business process, whatever is needed within the ship while you are on voyage, right? And then whenever the ship goes back to the main location, you synchronize with the cloud. the main processing system. Yeah. So that way, even while with intermittent connectivity, you are able to still continue your business operations. Yeah. And this pattern has been observed a lot with the situations where the connectivity is very poor, or wherever you need real time, very quick information back to the asset. And another example is a cereal bar company at the production line.
Just sorry to interrupt. Request you to take another minute to close,
sure.
please.
Yeah, sure. So, and cereal bar company at the production line, they installed a camera, right? And then the cereal bars, as and when they produce, they click the pictures of it. Now, there is a ML model which has been trained with the faulty cereal bars as well as good cereal bars, has been deployed at the camera at the edge location. So, as and when the new cereal bar comes in, the new picture has been taken. These two were compared, and then the production line rejects and approves the cereal bar. So in this way, the process has been taken to the edge location. So just to conclude, in the enterprise world, IoT has been adopted to improve the productivity, to improve the experience, customer experience, and also they're entering into new business models like product as a service. And finally, they want to take the business processes to edge location. So with that, I would like to conclude my quick talk. So as I already explained, IoT is becoming new IT for enterprises during this Industry 4.0 era. So IoT itself is a trend which is applicable to almost every industry. We'll also see the creation of entirely new industries that build business models solely on the IoT data. So thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. I think, you really presented it well in terms of how the IoT is integrating from a perspective of consumer, commercial, industrial, and how the whole value chain in terms of product services, plus, in terms of customer experience and how a new business model is emerging. I think those are some very important points. And I think, this would really help the audience in terms of understanding and how that can be used to enable businesses. So thank you.
Thank you, Anuj.
With this, before I invite our next speaker, I would also have a gentle request for speakers to stay with 10 minutes of their allocated time. I would now invite a good friend and as well as Mr. Somesh Gupta, Vice President, Chief Growth Officer, Pinnacle Infotech. I've been knowing personally Somesh for many years when he has been leading Infosys in Jaipur. So he has more than 25 years of experience in IT services industry across diverse areas, include large-scale transformation, organization change management, delivery excellence, customer management. He is a subject matter expert in blockchain and cryptocurrency. Before joining Pinnacle as a Chief Growth Officer, he was center head for Infosys Jaipur campus. With this, Somesh, over to you. Look forward to hearing some interesting thoughts from you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Anuj. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can hear you well and see your screen as well. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'll be talking about some very, very practical aspects of IoT, usage of IoT devices and IoT connectivity in the field of construction and facilities management. As Anuj said, I represent Pinnacle Infotech Solutions, a leading provider of IT solutions to the AEC industry worldwide. And we are involved in some of the iconic projects, construction projects during pre-construction, construction, and post-construction across the world. For example, the Lusail Stadium in Qatar, where we're doing some significant work. Across facilities in the US, we are taking care of the Goa Airport, IIT Bhilai, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to present is kind of a brief summary of the Pinnacle experience in the field of IT. Does not include a lot of opinions and viewpoints that we have found. So to start, these are typical IoT sensors that most of us are aware of in a home. You have smart locks and keys. You have smart safes. Motion sensors are very common. the smoke detectors, fire alarms, CCTV cameras, intercoms. However, IoT now has taken root deep into the whole construction process. Now, the great thing about IoT, unlike most other technologies, IoT brings together the physical and the digital worlds. All other technologies that you talk of, the AI, the machine learning, blockchain, crypto, digital, all of those primarily deal with the digital world alone. IoT is unique in the sense that it basically connects the physical world and has the ability to change the world as we experience, and not just the world that we experience on our digital devices. Now, IoTs provide a very important function. They give us spatio-temporal visibility. That is, they basically tell us where something is happening in space and in time. They provide high fidelity. They basically are capable of telling us very accurately what's happening, and hence they increase the level of autonomy of the digital systems that we have built over a period of time as mankind. And at the same time, they provide us, they afford us the adaptability to changing environmental and operational conditions. And because they are capable of giving us practically continuous data points, we can basically react to stimuli as human beings or as sentient beings operate, right? And they basically are primarily designed to monitor the ambient conditions, the physical conditions, and are in the second phase, basically are used to control these conditions to an extent. And in the ultimate analysis, using some of the other technologies like AI, machine learning, big data, analytics, and some of the trust machines like blockchain, etc., we are even able to optimize the physical world to our requirements. And hence, while they enable autonomy, they give certain amount of intelligence about the environment. With AI and machine learning and deep learning technologies, they give us the learning capability and provide high fidelity conditions. For the AEC industry, the construction industry, which I'm currently part of, IoTs are practically revolutionizing all the three phases, which are the pre-construction or design phase, the actual build phase, and the operate phase, which goes on after an environment is built. And I'd briefly be talking about all these three phases. Now, Mr. Raja briefly touched upon digital twins, right? A digital twin is a dynamic digital replica, has come in vogue in last 18 years after Michael Greaves kind of coined this term. However, it's very important to note that when IoTs, they are modeled as digital twins, they have the potential to evolve an autonomous system. To give you a very crude example of a digital twin, Google Maps are a very crude example of a digital twin. They basically are replicating or modeling the physical environment or the transport infrastructure for us. You are able to see where the transport pathways are, how the road conditions are there at any given point in time. And not only that, you can then utilize that information to determine the best possible path for yourself. And if you want the system to do it, even they can do it, right? Even Google Maps can basically suggest, and those are the APIs that are being utilized by the Garmins, by the Ubers, Olas, Lyfts, etc. of the world, right? When you would have autonomous cars, when you would have a lot of drones or UAVs flying themselves and delivering things and delivering people. You would even have the possibility of Google Maps evolving into a complete autonomous digital twin. Now, why I'm talking about this is because digital twins are extremely, extremely important in case of pre-construction or design stage. This is what we think a physical asset like the iconic structure in Australia can basically be created as a digital asset which replicates the properties of the physical asset, and it becomes responsive to the sentient conditions only with the help of the IoT devices. We do think there are multiple steps in basically creating a digital twin. For example, you should first do a reality capture, and these reality captures can be there are laser scans that basically can create point clouds. These can be drone mounted photogrammetry kind of devices. They can do the survey. Then you can basically go ahead and create a 2D or a 3D integrated design map. You can connect this model to a persistent data. You can link it to a 4D or a 5D kind of a model using various BIM softwares like BIM 360, Revit, Tekla, etc. You can enrich it with real-time IoT sensors, and this is where IoTs play a major part. And then you can basically program them to do a two-way data integration. And the next and the final step is to enable the digital twin. And I would have examples of a digital twin in one of the further slides in the post-built environment to become autonomous in terms of operations and maintenance, just as Mr. Pavankumar gave a small example a while ago. Moving on, these are some of the simple examples of IoT during build. However, they are very practical examples. Safety, enhancing the safety aspects and reducing chances of accidents in a build environment are one of the biggest worries of the AEC industry. You can have simple IoT devices, for example, sensors on workers' clothing, on their hats, and so on and so forth, that basically sense. And not only sense, they can alert both the worker as well as the supervisor in a centralized site. There can be variables that can basically monitor for hazardous materials and make sure that the builders do not go out of favor with the regulators and are able to keep the workers safe. And then there are sensors that can basically monitor people entering an unsafe area. For example, using a combination of laser beams and IoT enabled cameras, you can basically define a digital boundary for an unsafe site area. And should there be any human entering that area, the IoT devices are intelligent enough to alert and alarm and ensure that unsafe areas remain protected and remain unvisited. Sites can be connected, various sites can be connected by sensors, CCTV cameras, drones, and these can feed the data back to a central office. In fact, as Mr. Pavan said, IoTs have the potential to give rise to new business models. And this could be a business model, just like today, a lot of back-end processing gets done by BPOs, could be a good back-end processing in construction. The decisions based on these sensors can be made on where a construction project is. You do not have to basically trust on humans where there's a possibility of fudging the data and human errors, and automatically adjustments can be made to keep a project on track. Then, as Ms. Mugdha talked about a household example of a fridge talking to a grocer, sensors and RFID tags on construction material, they can automate workflows and can keep replenishing the inventory of various items on a construction site, allowing for proactive ordering of materials. Now, IoT in post-construction, as you may realize, about 5% of the cost of a construction project is pre-construction, which is design. About 25% is the actual construction, and about 70% is actually the facility management, the post-construction operations phase, which goes on for many decades. And that is where IoTs have a major role to play. And Pinnacle is helping some of the biggest companies out there in this. Two prime examples or two models that this can be used in is an asset can be managed with the help of IoT, and a systematic and coordinated set of activities can be done. And I again allude to Mr. Pavan, who gave a small example of this. And then whole facilities management, whole airports, the metro systems, the transport systems, factories, the warehouses, the stores, right? All of these facilities, a lot of sentient behavior can be built into the system, and the CMMS systems can basically be integrated with IoT, or you can even create a digital twin and do facilities management, proactive management, predictive management rather than preventive management or actual break fix. There's an example of an IoT sensor. When a sensor is attached to a pump, it can basically give a live performance data that includes a performance history. This monitors the asset in real time and can alert us to failures. There are, of course, false positives and false negatives possibility, and big data analytics and AI can help us in this. Here's another example of a traction motor drive that can basically be connected to an IoT device like ESP8266, which can sense temperature, current, and vibration, and can feed that data into a cloud server. That cloud server can be connected to an iPad as shown in this, and instead of physically looking at the device, the workman can look at it on the iPad and simulate this. And I have a small video that kind of shows this. Now, this is a small 1.5 minute video where I want to show you how IoT devices can basically take care of post-build environment, facilities management environment. And I've taken example of automating the maintenance routes of machinery of a pump room, how maintenance can be simulated, how a scenario can be simulated in a large facility, and how VR can be assisted. This is just a video, it does not have voice. So if you look at it, this is a facility where the maintenance routes are zigzag. However, the maintenance routes can become better, and the red and the green lines show that the devices that are perfectly okay and devices that need correction. Here's a simulation that's being done. Another simulation in large facility where a lot of hazardous material and hazardous environment is there, and a centralized facility can basically simulate an actual person going into a virtual plant and can look at where there are chances of a flame and how these flames can basically be avoided by a person, and something can be this thing. The last but not the least is example of a VR enabled maintenance scenario where a particular machine is being looked at by an engineer in a VR simulated scenario. Based on that, the engineer actually goes to the site, looks at the simulation as well as the physical machine, finds that needs to talk to a more qualified engineer and calls her, and then takes care of the issue.
Now, Somesh, can I just request another minute if you could take?
No, I'll not take a minute, Anuj, just 20 seconds. So in summary, IoT devices are actually in the AEC industry, closing the loop between design and execution. And not only that, they're making complex projects that were hitherto impossible possible. They are playing, as I showed, a major role in preventive and predictive maintenance in construction scenarios. However, their real power is realized when they are combined with other technologies like AI, ML, and big data technologies, and they are actually revolutionizing the industry. And my personal opinion is that soon we would see the rise of property tax, similar to fintechs, unicorns that are powered mainly by IoTs and utilize other technologies. With this, I thank you all.
Thank you, Somesh, for a very interesting session. And I know the amount kind of work in BIM, what Pinnacle has been doing, and some of the marquee projects, I think you really touched upon in terms of how the IoT is touching our lives at homes, and how they also play a very important role in terms of connecting the physical world to the digital world. We also talked about the life cycle of construction project, design, build, and in terms of the overall operational phase and how an IoT can enable the whole thing. And while we are doing the development, how an IoT can also bring precision, safety, security, and efficiency at site. And post the site is operational, how a virtual maintenance can really enable businesses in terms of in-time solution, as well as in terms of a cost-effective and a timely solution. So thank you for that. And with this, I would also like to invite our third eminent speaker, Mr. Agrawal. He is Chief Operating Officer at Cyclo Technologies, responsible for all customer business operations, including sales, demand generation, field operations, and customer experience. In this role, he brings in a sharp focus on identifying organization needs and building revenue, delivery, the highest levels of customer experience. So over to you, Mr. Agrawal.
Thank you, Mr. Bindal. And thanks everyone for this opportunity to speak to this audience. I know we are running behind, so I'll quickly get started. The speakers prior to me, including Ms. Sinha, spoke about the strong focus that exists around getting data from IoT and the opportunity that it presents, the opportunity to be able to get data from across different sources. Skylo basically solves one core problem, which is provides connectivity anywhere and 100% of the time, right? So that's the overall premise. The whole focus of the presentation today is about how can we make IoT more affordable and accessible to the masses, which is when the real impact will start coming in. So when each of you work with different organizations, and when you look at how things are, we talk about the fact that there is a lot of data that's available in the ecosystem out there. However, not all of that data is available at all points of time, right? So the data being available in real time fundamentally will help aggregate data across various sources, help take a better decision around various processes and systems without any human intervention. Most organizations today get about 50 to 70% of the data in real time. And a lot of them actually never get the data in a digital format. They get it in a manual format, which is collected by some human somewhere and put together. And the rest is all extrapolated and assumed that this is how data is being made available, right? What is increasingly happening is organizations are realizing that getting this data 100% of the time can actually create a competitive edge. And when you look at organizations that have access to data are able to analyze that data and then take informed decisions are much better placed in terms of either driving operational efficiency or bringing or serving their customers better. And that's a clear competitive edge that's emerging, which is why there's such a strong focus on using IoT across various industries, right? Be it logistics, be it utilities, be it remote device management, be it agri-tech. Everywhere there's a fairly strong focus on this. And the Olympics just got over, and we all talk about Neeraj Chopra. The reality is for him to move from 70 meters on his javelin throw to 75 would have taken a certain amount of effort. But moving from 75 to 85 and 85 to the record that he broke would have taken a significantly higher amount of effort, right? And that's fundamentally what happens when any organization is trying to get data across all of their assets. Moving that journey from a 70% to 100% is exponential. And the data needs just start going up and up dramatically. That's fundamentally the challenge that exists. When you look at India specifically, there's a lot of data that's available across machines. There are close to 2 crore machines across different sectors that are available. And we haven't really factored in the passive equipment that exists, equipment that does not move around across all of these locations. All of this that we're talking about, be they trucks or construction vehicles, be they farming equipment, be they healthcare services to ambulances or even fishing vessels, they're all equipment that actually can move around. When we extend this to talk about equipment that cannot move around, let's say in aquaculture, or let's say in electricity management, utilities management, that equipment quantum is even more, right? So there's a huge opportunity that comes in when all of this data comes together. How is it that organizations can then use that data more effectively? Right? And that's the whole challenge that organizations struggle with. When you look at cellular networks today, cellular networks are not able to provide 100% connectivity. The green lines on this map as a representation, we've actually picked up the data from how cellular networks operate, show that there is fairly large patches of the country which are not really connected to cellular networks. And assets that move around, the kind of assets I showed in my previous slide, are assets that will move around in parts where there's absolutely no connectivity. What is that availability of that data real time worth to organizations today, right? When you talk about Industry 4.0, you talk about various IoT initiatives, the demand is for 100% connectivity and that data to be available real time. And most organizations also prefer to work with a single provider. Increasingly, the complexities that used to exist in IoT, where there is a device, there is a connectivity, there's an application software, all of them create a challenge that is very difficult to put together. And organizations are coming back and saying, hey, give us one single solution. We need one throat to choke. Right? The third piece is remote connectivity. Building that up is expensive. There are options available, but it is expensive. And the ability to take smarter decisions does get impacted when, like I mentioned in my prior slide, when the information is only available in a limited manner. Right? Look at the options. So there's a problem statement. Connectivity is not 100%. To be able to achieve the benefit of 100% connectivity and 100% data, there are various options that exist. Are they really worth it, right? So you say, hey, let's look at satellite networks. They are expensive today. How do you work with them? You look at cellular or Wi-Fi networks. They are patchy. They will only exist in certain parts. You say, hey, we're going to use Wi-Fi networks. They will exist in certain parts. And you look at any other kind of network today, it is limited to certain areas. And it is impossible to be able to get the ROI or the incremental investment required to hit 100% connectivity. And that's where Skylo comes in. How is it that we can make IoT the usability of IoT, ubiquitous and affordable. How is it that we can extend it to every use case, make an ROI that works for every use case, right? And this is where Skylo comes in. So I spoke about satellite, saying that satellite is expensive. This is where we make a difference. We've been able to make it extremely affordable by bringing down the cost of the connectivity as well as the equipment that's required. And that's what I'll quickly touch upon about the advantages of having affordable IoT that can work across. The 2 or 3 things that are required, right? Is the data available 100% of the time? Yes. Is it available in a cost that is relatively inexpensive? The speakers prior to me spoke about security. You don't want to be driving your vehicle on the highway between Ahmedabad to Baroda, let's say, at 100 kilometers an hour, and it suddenly gets killed by someone remotely and stopped in the middle of the highway, resulting in a major pileup. You don't want that to happen. So how do you ensure that all the data is encrypted into it? And how do you also have mechanisms to be able to monitor it? The previous speaker spoke about hazardous operating conditions. How do you take how do you have an immediate response based on a certain condition or certain conditions that are not being met? What typically happens with narrowband IoT is that you can use that to be able to provide complete coverage wherever there's no cell phone coverage. Narrowband IoT does require much smaller devices. It consumes a lot lesser amount of data, which means that the cost of data also goes down significantly. And because it's narrowband IoT, the battery is a lot longer, right? And with some of the solutions, with some of the use cases that we've been working with, we've been able to create an end-to-end solution that provides connectivity for the 100% missing data, 100% data that is required, the 30% data that is missing. These are some of the use cases, and these are actual use cases where we have been able to make data affordable. One of the biggest areas that the government is focusing on, which is the area of development, is equipment rental, right? So when we look at, let's say, various large states, Rajasthan today is the largest state in the country, and it's a fairly distributed environment. There are people that are working across the state. You look at some of the other states which are in the Himalayas, for example. 84% of the farmers are smaller farmers, and they do want to be able to get use modern technology to be able to work on their farm. They can't afford to buy one, but can they rent the equipment and use it, right? Trucks when they're traveling, the long haul trucks when they're traveling between remote locations or between various cities, there is a requirement for complete availability of data in those cases. I'll use an example. There was some of our equipment that was moving from Gurgaon to Bangalore, and for about 6 hours, we had absolutely no visibility on where that equipment was. Now, was it that the logistics provider chose to not share that information? Or was it that genuinely there was no information available because it was in the middle of the forest, somewhere in the middle of Madhya Pradesh? We don't know. And that's something that customers are increasingly demanding, saying we need to know at every point of time what is happening with our data, what is happening with our assets, wherever they are. We've done this work similarly with heavy equipment, construction equipment. In Tripura, one of our customers had been struggling to be able to get visibility on where their assets are. They were able to get that information real time once they deployed a solution like Skylo. Healthcare again, very strong focus on healthcare. Changed even more in the last 1.5 years, ensuring that the patients who need medical healthcare are delivered that no matter where they are. If there is an emergency, how is it that the ambulance can reach them the fastest? We talk about fishing boats. Again, fisheries is a fairly large sector. You would be surprised in terms of the contribution it makes to the GDP of the country. However, fishing boats are one. The moment they venture out beyond 8 to 10 nautical miles, there's absolutely no connectivity. There is no GSM option. The only option is satellite, which is again worth over a couple of lakhs of rupees, and communication costs on an ongoing basis are even more expensive. Construction vehicles, there's a strong focus that the government of India has on building roads, on building infrastructure in remote parts of the country. That's the catch. It's a remote part of the country and there's absolutely no connectivity there. How do you ensure that you're able to monitor the project sitting in your air-conditioned offices in a metro? But also, how do you ensure that all the people who are working there are operating in safe conditions? These are some of the use cases that we worked on with various organizations, and the whole focus and thrust is it actually helps make IoT a lot more affordable, gives access to information 100% of the time, and drives things forward. The core point, can you get an end-to-end solution that is worth a cup of a chai per day? Right? How do you get to that level? That's when, that's the revolution that happened with telecom 10 years ago. That's the revolution that could possibly happen with IoT as the next stage. Most organizations are looking at doing that. Various use cases come to mind. I've spoken about a few of them. How do you ensure 3 basic parameters? Safety and real-time communication, measuring and monitoring performance, and being able to drive connectivity irrespective of what the mode of communication is. As a result, get 100% of the data throughout the entire value chain and be able to drive that competitive advantage. That's what affordable IoT can fundamentally do to any organization from a user's perspective. I hope, Anuj, I'm well within my time. That's all I had to present today. Thank you.
Absolutely. So thanks, Mr. Agrawal. And I think, you really talked about in terms of how IoT can really enable in terms of decision making, overall data analytics, IoT usability in an affordable manner. So I think, like we've been commonly saying now, data is the new gold, and that's what you're making affordable. And you're saying the real-time communication in the remote and the low network areas. I think that's something which is really the need of the hour today. And thank you for those inputs. I would just request Mr. Prakash, though you were next in terms of the presentation, Mr. Saifi has requested in terms of, since he needs to leave a little early, can I just ask him to present before Mr. Prakash, I can go to you?
Yeah,
That be okay?
Yeah, no problem.
So with this, thanks, Mr. Prakash, and Mr. Saifi, I would now request you for a presentation, and I'll request you to also stay within that 10 minutes. So with this, I'll just do a brief introduction. Mr. Saifi is the Senior Vice President for Digital Business Services and also heads the IoT Center for Excellence at Happiest Minds. He is a technology entrepreneur involved with multiple technology startups with over 24 years of extensive technical and management experience in building niche global technology products across multiple areas like multimedia, communication technologies, broadband, modem setup, triple play gateway, IoT, complex hardware, portable components across multiple platforms, etc. So over to you, Mr. Saifi. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Anuj, and thanks to Mr. Sameer as well for consideration. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the kind introduction as well, Mr. Anuj. So basically, I'll just quickly, and I have looked at all the speakers, esteemed panels. They've talked about a lot of insights. Primarily going to cover a little bit on how IoT specifically, right, has been forefront in terms of transforming the whole digital enterprises, right, from energy sector perspective. So what I will do is I'll just quickly go over a little bit background on what. Just give me a second. You're able to see the slide deck, right?
Yeah, we can hear you well as we can see your presentation.
Sure. So if you look at it today, I mean, I'm not going to go the numbers. I think numbers, looks very different when on the reality. But the way the whole trends are going in the energy side, if you look at it, how can the Uberization of the energy sector can go on, right? I mean, typically now the consumers are not only the consumers, right? They can also becoming producers because of the renewable energy source, and the grids are basically changing to the bi-directional smart grid, right? So how can the energy become a Uberization where you no longer have a plant which only makes or generates energy, right? I mean, you have energy generation from all different pockets, and that's where, if you look at it, the whole Internet of Things from an energy utility perspective, it's going to Internet of Energy, right, where anybody can produce energy and push it to the grid, and then it can go to anyone who would need it, right, at whatever cost they would like to incur. So a lot of innovations, a lot of infrastructure challenges which have come up in terms of making this smart grid is already coming up, and a lot of the energy generation bigger companies, right, they're starting to bring some of these challenges, right, as how they can solve it through IoT analytics and the blockchain perspective. So some of the figures which I will leave it to here to read, but if you look at it traditionally, the whole renewable segment is going, it will probably cross 50%. Maybe next 3 years. The next is how we can become an individual virtual power plant, right, where every consumer would start to produce energy and goes back to the grid, right. Not only they consume the energy, but any extra energy they can go back to the cloud. So that's how the whole point. What I was trying to highlight here is the whole space where the companies are looking at IoT as a technology to bring in the real-time data. And a lot of previous speakers have talked about how IoT can help bring the real-time data. I look at IoT simply as a human being, right. We have a lot of sensors, and your brain is able to get the data in real time from all these sensors, right. And that's what the IoT brings in. I think the previous speaker talked about this data being the gold, right. I would extend that data to experience and trust. While the data is a gold, but even though if you have a data, you generate insight, if there's no experience, right, the data would be waste because people are not going to use it, right. And even the experience is good if you are not able to create the trust, right, then the whole piece fall apart. So having said that, there are a lot of innovations, transformations happening on the energy sectors, and if I look at globally as how IoT would transform and what are the major verticals where IoT would take a lead, right. Obviously, manufacturing industrial is one of the key vertical where if you look at it traditionally, most of the IoT, we talk about IIoT 4.2, right, and it's going beyond because every machines, though it has become intelligent, but still the data doesn't come at a single place for you to take insight, right. So obviously that manufacturing industrial is one of the key vertical. The whole transportation and mobility, right, where how can I make supply chain to be supply chain 4.2, right, is what is picking up. And the energy, as I said, is picking up third, and a lot of other verticals. Every vertical is trying to adopt how IoT can be deployed to bring the real-time data from the context, from the environment, from the sensors and so on and so forth, right, through which we can generate a meaningful insight. So if I little bit drill down on the energy part, right, I mean, everybody knows that there's generation, there are power plants. So traditionally you have power plant where the energy gets generated either through a fossil, through renewable, through nuclear, right. So this is the value chain, right from generation to transmission to distribution, and the consumer, as I talked about, right. The consumers have also become producer, right. So the convention is being changed now, not to consumer but a prosumer, right. So if I look at all of this, right, a lot of IoT use cases have been driven right from centralized control room where sitting at a power plant, you don't necessarily need to go inspect all the assets, right. You be it a central control room and be able to visualize or able to get the data from all different aspect sensors. It could be flow, it could be temperature, it could be pressure at different zones, right, and be able to figure it out if something is going wrong or not. So what IoT has really transformed is able to get those environment data in a real time. Thereby you can get to see at a common place, right. And on top of that, once you have your predictive and different analytical models that you run on top of that, right, using the historical data, you can really predict that if some anomaly is going to come in future, right. Like I gave you example of the human body, the heart. When the heartache or heart attack comes, right, your body starts to emit a lot of parameters which probably we miss, we don't sense it, right. And that's what the beauty of this real-time sensors are, which gives you some of these indications. If you're able to build an intelligent algorithm on top to predict ahead of time, you can predict the anomaly. So as I said, a lot of machines, assets which are connected in a manufacturing factory, gets to you get to know basically when the assets are going to fail and so on and so forth, so that you can take a preventive or predictive maintenance. The transmission line, right? Once the energy is produced, obviously you need a high voltage transmission lines, right, to transmit the energy from source to destination, right. And that's where I talked about the smart grid, right. Today most of the grids were and starting to change, right. Most of the grid were unidirectional, where from power source to power consumption, right? Now it's getting bidirectional where, the consumers, could also produce the power and feed it back, right? So a lot of these pieces have been coming into forefront where a lot of investments are going on, as well as a fault monitoring, right? I mean, typically in olden days, the whole transmission line goes through your mountains, goes through your sea, very, very harsh places, right? Where in case if any fault occurs in the high voltage transmission lines, right, it's not easy to monitor, right? They used to send technicians remotely, but now all of these fault sensors, right, which actually goes and monitors, your power harmonics, your current voltages, any kind of fault that happens, right, between two poles, it can give you clear indication as where the faults are. So typically these are some of the pieces that we look at from a transmission side, and obviously the distribution side, as I talked about, right, the whole distributed energy resources, right, where I really don't care where the energy generation is happening, right, as long as I'm able to feed the energy to the consumer at a lower cost, which is nothing but a supply chain, right? Today, Amazon, Flipkart, if you look at it, right, what have they done? They have built a whole supply chain and e-commerce marketplace, right? Can I build an e-commerce marketplace for energy, right? So both from a generation perspective as well as consumer perspective, right, could handshake and look at what kind of contract that they want to have. So it will become more like a real-time marketplace, real-time trading, right? So that's where it is evolving. And the prosumer, as I talked about, because of all these EVs charging, your renewables and so on and so forth, things are taking a shape where a lot of these consumers are also becoming intelligent, and I think experience is what is talked about, right? Where it's important for me to know my consumptions on real time, right? When I say today, a lot of places smart meters have been installed, but do I know my daily consumption in terms of how much I am consuming every hour, right? I don't get the data, right? I get end of the month a bill saying that this is what your consumption is all about, right? But if I get to know my real-time data, real-time consumption, I can really look at how do I reduce my consumption. So these are some of these pieces that are there as a part of this. I'm a little bit hurrying it up because I just need to kind of and I think there is also a definition of IoT was talked about in one of the previous session. I look at IoT is nothing but IT plus OT, right? Because it consists of lot of OT elements, and those OT elements have to spit out the data, aggregate the data, get to IT system in a secure way. And today everybody is going to cloudify their whole on-prem systems, right? So how can you bring your IT infrastructure into the cloud to be able to look at this data and then be able to create insights, create experience layer on top, right? So right from, if I look at, or if I zoom down the power generation piece only, right from sourcing to demand forecasting to planning, scheduling to plant maintenance operations, right? Lot of bottlenecks or challenges are there where if I put in sensors, right, I would be able to get those real-time data, and then that data I can analyze, based on various deep learning AI ML models to help create insights for different stakeholders, right? Could be a plant maintenance guys, could be a operations guy, could be a R&D guy, could be IT guy, business guy, right? And that's where the beauty of the whole IoT is all about, right? I mean, it is just a plumbing infrastructure. Once you have connected all the sensors, your connectivity either to a wireless to wired, I think NB-IoT, my previous panel speaker have talked about. So all of these wireless wired technologies, once the data is coming to a common place, right? How do you create those data lake so that the data not only coming from real time, but all the batch sources, which could be your planning schedule, which could be your inventory schedule or your MES schedule from your plant shop floor. Once those data are available, it can be enriched with all the sensor data, so that you can have a better correlation and to create a insight to all the stakeholders. So the way we see that whole transformation from enterprise perspective, right, and when we approach them, right, I mean, for any enterprise, you have already a current state, right, where your systems would be legacy, data would be in silos, on-prem, so on and so forth. How can I visualize a reimagined state? When I say reimagined state, obviously I'm not building it, but I'm visualizing a reimagined state, right? How would it look like? And what kind of impact that's going to generate, right? And I think Mr. Raja earlier talked about this whole value discovery, which is extremely important, because at the end of the day, whatever initiative that you start, you need to understand what is the value it's going to be delivered to all the stakeholders, right? And that's where we look at it, the business outcome, right? Where the experience to customer is extremely important, right? And whatever you do, that has to be kept in the forefront. The second piece is How can you empower the internal workforce, right? Which means that the workforce can be more proactive and collaborative, right? So IoT is really helping like worker safety and some of those, right? Tracking all those assets rather than taking them a digital worker app, right, with a tablet, so that they can, they don't need to go and take a paper and logbook, right? So how do you empower the employees? How do you optimize the operations, right? So what kind of automation you can bring it in to optimize the whole operational cost, right, which can improve your bottom line, right? And the fourth but not the least is, how can you create this reimagined state where I can really create a data layer and be able to, create an insight which I could sell it to monetize, right, and create a new business model, right? And that's where everybody is going towards that. How can I SaaSify my platform, right, by bringing it more stakeholders, more consumers who are ready to pay for the challenging services. So this is what we look at as a transformation. These are the 4 outcomes, and if I look at these 4 outcomes, what are the key tenets or the use cases, right, which will be driven from energy utility perspective? If you look at some of this, right, how can I increase the experience from the customer, right, by having a real-time a digital assistant? Just for a given example, right? So in my mobile phone, I'm able to see what my usage are at any given time, right, so that I can take a corrective action. How can I bring in a self-service portal, right? So some of these pieces are there. How, as a part of empowering the employees, can I bring in a worker safety, right, which will help my workers, to be able to, go freely in a hazardous or a environment which are not that safe, right? At least they will get a right, indication or alarms at the appropriate times. The operational optimization, as I talked about, are primarily on your shop floor. The data will be there, but if are not connected, it's of no use, right? So how can you bring the real-time visibility, transparency, the usage, right, which is what we talk about, this whole OE, right, operational equipment efficiency. And I think one of the previous speaker also talked about the digital twin, right? So slowly the things are going to move to look at, can I build a digital replica of a physical asset, right? So that I can fast forward the digital replica in terms of wear and tear and, look at those aspects. And last but not the least, as I talked about the whole product and services, right? How could I bring a new innovative way by bringing the technology, right? Could be vision-based, camera-based, to help, streamline some of those new services, which will add, revenue. So the way we look at and transform the whole thing is, and I've seen, because I've been in the industry for the last few years, and I think Madam, she talked about the whole IoT, right? IoT is primarily there for a long time, right? I mean, your router is typically IoT device, because router is connected to your central office. They are able to push the firmware and so on and so forth. So and a lot of these initiatives around IoT failed for last, quite a few years, especially in India, that I'm seeing it, right? Because people really don't look at, as a value, what is going to, come out at the end of this initiative, right? They just look at it. Can I do a pilot? IoT looks to be a very, new, I would say jazzy technology, right? Can I implement it? They don't look at it. What is the value it's going to drive? Who are the stakeholders which gets benefited, right? And that's where when we look at the whole system, we look at saying that, how do I bring a common platform, right? The use cases or the different scenarios can come in, but how I can build a common platform by integrating all this data. The sensors could come and go, technologies would come and go, right? But how can I create a digital thread as a common data lake, right? Where the use cases would come in, each use cases would bring in its own sensors, and then the relevant stakeholders would get benefited by different insights, and so on and so forth, right? So this is how we kind of approach the whole problem on solving it. So I'll just I think that's what all what I have to kind of say. Sorry to hurry it up quickly.
So thank you, Mr. Safi, for that amazing presentation. And I think you touched upon energy, as a very important sector in terms of bringing efficiency and overall supply chain efficiency in terms of the energy sector, because anything we talk about, maybe it is data or anything, energy remains the core in terms of anything to move. And I think in India, we all know there are issues with regard to transmission losses. Power grid transmission losses are as high as about 25 to about 35%, for which we all pay, And I think if technologies like these can really help, can be a big transforming change in terms of cost as well as efficiencies we bring in. And I think one important point which you talked about in terms of marketplace or exchange of energy, I think I would also request FICCI and especially Atul, if that could be taken up with the state government, central government, how we can create these marketplaces. Of course, net metering and other things have come up, but this can really be a game changer for not only at a country, state, or city level, but also at micro locations, where there can be exchange of energy. So with this, thank you, Mr. Safi, and I would now like to invite Mr. Samir Prakash, who is head of digital enterprise at Siemens Limited. He has a rich experience of 32 years in automation digitization with Siemens. He is currently heading digital enterprise, digital industry division in Siemens India. This includes bringing all product solutions and services from Siemens to customers to bring out the benefits of digitization to the manufacturing industry. So over to you, Mr. Prakash. Thank you.
Thank you, FICCI. I hope I am audible and you can see my screen also.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah. So this I think is also the last session before we conclude. So let me give you a perspective of what Siemens talks about and what is the Siemens way of Industry 4.0 and how its adoption can basically, help in addressing the key challenges of the manufacturing enterprises. And needless to say, this also has a very strong link to the IoT piece of it. So let me start with some of the key challenges first. So if you look at the key challenges which are faced by the manufacturing industry, I'll not go through all of them. Let me take select a few of them. Say speed or time to market. Now, this is something which most of the manufacturing enterprises or industries are grappling with, because the fast changing consumer demands are ensuring that the supplier or the manufacturer needs to come up with new products much faster and much regularly. So they have to have a manufacturing process in place where you can speed up the whole process from a design to the final product much faster than what you are doing today. And also with that is linked the flexibility. Today, consumers are looking for customized goods, and but they're ready to pay the price of only a mass-produced good. So manufacturers need to ensure that your manufacturing is flexible enough to support mass customization. Another aspect or key challenge which I've been seeing in one of many of the manufacturing enterprises specific to India is the operational resilience. Now, this is something which also is which became very prevalent during the COVID times. Many manufacturers, experienced the supply chain disruptions, and that was hampering their production in a big way. So, as such, real-time visibility across the value chain is something which most of the manufacturers are looking for, and this has to extend right from the supplier management and into the product life cycle management also. So if you look at these challenges, let us see how do we address these challenges. So what we in Siemens believe is that if you want to address such challenges, what you need is first a holistic digital approach. And this is very important, because if you have a digitalization approach which is a holistic in nature and cutting across the complete value chain, that is the basis of how you can ensure that you have very consistently on a continuous basis able to address the challenges and achieve the benefits which you are looking for. So if you look at this slide, I'll go a little bit into the depth of this slide because this is where the concept comes in. If you look at any manufacturing process, I'll just explain this 1 minute. So sorry for the interruption. So what I'm saying here is, if you look at any manufacturing process, there are 5 distinct stages: the design of the product, the production planning, the engineering, execution, and services. Now, what we say is that you need to have a very strong methodology in place, which is at least the concept part of it, where you integrate all the 5 stages and also digitalize it. That's something which is the key here, because once you do that, what you're actually doing is creating a digital thread or weaving a digital thread across the entire value chain. And this is very important, because once you do this integration of the digital thread, you will ensure that the data which is moving, possibility of moving data right across the stages is very seamless. You can go back and forth right from stage 1 to stage 5. And once you have this in process, you will be able to do what you're creating is a digital twin of the product also, that is on the product design side, and on the production, which is where you actually design the production lines. This is the key of the whole concept of digital twin, because by doing this, what you're actually doing is you are testing the product, you are validating it, you are also simulating it, doing all the what if scenarios in the virtual environment, both for product side and the production side. Once you are done all the what if checks and you are convinced with what the output is, then you deploy it onto the shop floor. This ensures that the deployment of, say, the production line, you save a lot of time there, and this leads to much faster introduction of products on the shop floor. And we have many examples to show in India itself. Many automotive companies, also food and beverage industries have followed this concept, where now, if previously they were using 3 or 4 lines to make different products, today on the same line, because of this digital twin creation of the whole manufacturing line, they were able to ensure that 3 or 4 variations are on the same line. So you don't need separate lines for that. And that was a big saving, because they were able to also save on the batch size, which is also leading to mass customization requirements. But important part here is the IoT piece which comes in. Once your production starts and you start collecting data, this data, you bring it onto the cloud. We have a cloud called MindSphere, and it can be any open IoT operating system. You start collecting this data, and it is not there. This data is not for just storage. And as all the previous speakers have said, you need to analyze this data, and the insights which you get from this data, you feed it back into your product design system and your production system. And that is the power of having this whole digital twin across the value chain, because now you are creating a closed loop decision environment, which forms the basis of your continuous improvement. One important aspect of this approach is, of course, it is possible to adopt in any discrete industry, process industry. We have cases where it has been done for line builders. Also, machine builders are using these concepts. It is applicable to both brownfield and greenfield, as most of you know that the market of the manufacturing landscape of India is saddled with a lot of brownfield installations. So this is an approach which can also be used there. And of course, it is based on open standard interfaces. So going forward, let me give you an example of how we have done specifically the IIoT piece. This is a customer who is basically manufacturing machines, and his machines go all over the country. Now, what he wants is, he wants to ensure that he is able to give better services to his customer. He wants to get real-time data of his machine, the performance of his machine, right from all the places where he has installed it. The advantage of this was connecting it onto the cloud, and then from there he was able to get very important insights of his machine, and he could get the advantage of spare part management. He improved it big time. He also was able to improve the quality of the visits of his service guys. One big advantage which this specific customer was telling me was that he was also able to be on the same wavelength as that of his customer, because many times he would have a problem of his customer saying this machine is not working, but because both have the same data now available on both sides, the customer, his customer and he himself, they were able to see the transparency in a very, very better way. Another advantage which this brought about to this customer and to many such machine manufacturers is, he was able to use the insights which he got from all the data collected to even improve the design of his machine on a continuous basis. This was something which is appreciated much better, because he was able to now come up with new versions of his machine with real quality hard data to do that. And of course, once you have the data, you can also do the predictive part of his maintenance, because with he could replace the air filter in this case much before the actual failure happened. So this was one case of the machine builder where we have been doing such customers are there in plenty in India. And I'm purposely taking such cases because these are all SMEs. We are not talking about the big customers here. We know India has a lot of SMEs, and this could be very strong story or a benefit which they could get using the IIoT approach. Another example is now coming to the end user. Now here, this is a FMCG company who is making actually soaps and shampoos, and they have many lines all over the country, maybe around 50 to 55 production lines. Now there were two things. One, he wanted to have transparency of his production line, and also the regular OEE is the overall equipment effectiveness is something which he wanted to also monitor, which was not there today, because most of the production lines in India, if you see, have machines, but they are not interconnected. So what we did was, here one had to only connect all the various devices or machines on the shop floor, connect it to the cloud, and then from there all these benefits he could get. Not only that, he could also, because he had the digital twin of the line, he was able to now add another machine if he has to increase the capacity very easily, because now you have the digital twin in place. Adding another machine into that, you just have to do it first virtually very fast, and then deploy it onto the shop floor with the least amount of time required. And that is where he got a very good benefit there. Another advantage of this was he was able to, of course, get more transparency, and this helped in a big way for him to improve the performance. Now, because he has 30-40 lines cutting across various geographical boundaries, he was also able to do benchmarking of one line against the other at various sites, and this way he could improve the performance of the machines or the lines which were not so much efficient. So that is the advantage which he could get here. One other example, which is cutting across the complete value chain, and this is what we have done in our own factory. As you know, in Siemens, we have our own factories also, where we do a lot of manufacturing of motors, switchgears, and also transformers. So this is our switchgear line in Bombay, where before digitalization, so you can see the impact of what our digital transformation brought about. We were having 77 different products, but were manufactured on 3 lines. But now with this digital twin concept and connecting it to IIoT, we were able to connect 180 different manufacturing products were manufactured on one single line. So here the variations were much more, but the line required is same. So this is the advantage of what we did with the digital twin approach. And of course, you get a better cycle time and quality check. So this is one key example which I was able to, when we were able to showcase. One important aspect of the switchgear factory is that it is also there where anyone can come and visit. Of course, not during COVID times, because we have restrictions now going on. But otherwise, with prior appointment, we can show you exactly how it is done. And we have a 2 days in a week for some hours, we keep it for the customer visits without disrupting the shop floor. So one can always actually see the whole digital enterprise approach onto the shop floor in India. And my last slide is on the benefits, which I think most of our previous speakers have also talked about. So finally, what you see from IIoT is operational transparency, condition monitoring, predictive maintenance, performance intelligence. These are the key benefits, and of course, the complete digital twin. So this is in nutshell what I wanted to tell. Thanks for the invite to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prakash, for a very detailed presentation and interesting points which you put across. I think, you really talked about in terms of the holistic approach and integrating of IoT and digital value chain. And I think your points also resonate to most of the other speakers as well, which really look at in terms of how the machine learning can enable both customer service and experience and build in the efficiency. So thank you for that. Since we have paucity of time, there are, this session has also, from the attendees, there are a lot of questions which have come to us. But, I will just take 2 questions and would ask the respective speakers to help talk about it. So the first question is, I would request Mr. Pavankumar to address, which is how much the OEM of IoT devices are aligned to information security, and how the security being managed and monitored on IoT devices.
Okay, hope you can hear me, right?
Yes.
So first of all, I mean, the security aspects also evolve with any technology, that we need to keep in mind, right? So now, when it comes to the IoT world is full of, let me switch on my camera as well. So IoT world is a convergence of IT as well as OT, right? So IT world already has security practices in place for decades, as well as OT world also has got a security practices in place. Now, where is that in a piece where we need to have more and more security in the IoT world is the device connectivity, wherein you are trying to connect these devices to the software platform, right? Software application or a platform. That is the piece. The device connectivity piece is the place where we need to take care of the higher security. That is point number one. Right. Now, the second point is this. Second point is that there are also a lot of regulations that are coming in place from different countries where where to keep the data, right? I mean, where to store the data, where to keep the data, where to process data, who should process the data, right? I mean, such kind of regulations are also coming in place, which is kind of, making the security aspect a little more better in the overall IoT end-to-end scenario. Yeah. Hope that clarifies. Or is it something different question?
No, that helps. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. I think this was helpful. There's another question, which I would request Mr. Somesh Gupta to address. Is there any standardization with regard to IoT sensors? At present, multiple vendors are there with different outputs in different formats. In the near future, can we hope for some kind of standardization?
Yes, so there are standards that are emerging and actively being worked on. There are different kinds of sensors that basically are already standardized. For example, if you see RFID sensors, they are already standardized by ISO organization. So there are standards that are emerging, and within 2 to 3 years, you can have a full-fledged standards across the spectrum of the IoT devices themselves. However, the IoT platforms, for example, the digital twin platform that I talked about, there's still lack of clarity on standardization. And we're still some distance away from the second level platforms that are built on top of IoTs. Hope that answers the question, Anuj.
Yeah, of course, Somesh. I think you really well explained that. Atul, do we have some more time, or should we just conclude because there was a couple of more questions?
I think we close now. The speakers, we can take 1 minute closing comments and then we wrap up the session.
Okay. Yeah, that would be fine. So I would request Mr. Kumar to go first. Okay, so I would request Mr. Kumar to go first, and then Mr. Somesh Gupta, Mr. Prakash, and then Mr. Agrawal. Please take a minute for concluding remarks, please. You're on mute, Mr. Kumar.
Okay, you can hear me now, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So at the end, I mean, IoT, it's not about, connecting devices and making, getting a lot of sensor data and weaving in dashboards, right? It's more about how these connected devices can bring business outcome. Unless we put the IoT into the context of the business scenario or business process, the technology doesn't add any value. So this is something which I would like to, share as a closing comment. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so IoT, as I said earlier, there are few particular aspects. Number one, it's not just a sensor, it's a smart sensor that has some sense of intelligence and connectivity. These are two typical aspects that differentiate a sensor from an IoT sensor, right? Second thing is IoT is our biggest bet in connecting the well-developed digital world that has emerged over last 40 years and the physical world as we know it and as we are living in it. And IoTs would help bridge that gap. Now, construction industry, which I'm part of, is at the forefront and is ripe for changes and adoption of IoT across various life cycles. We are already seeing IoTs coming in the consumer world. we are seeing IoTs coming in the industrial world, it's not long before we would even forget that IoTs exist and we would stop talking about it because they would become all pervasive like smartphones. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity and great talking to you all.
Thanks, Somesh.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, if you look at it from the manufacturing enterprise aspect, IIoT, I mean, just connecting data is not enough. So you need to have a very strong value proposition which come in the form of applications, because that's where the data gets analyzed and the insights which you create can be fed into as value to the whole manufacturing process. So that's one important aspect which has to always be thought about. And that has also been one of the reasons why IoT has failed in many cases and has not gone beyond the POC stage. So if the manufacturing industry or the enterprise is very clear on what is the value he is looking for, or what is his overall holistic picture for the digital transformation, then all this will definitely be taken care of. So that's all from my side as closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash. Mr. Agrawal.
Yes, thanks. Sir. So I think fundamentally the point is you can have IoT sensors, IoT devices picking up data from different locations, but if the data sits in silos in a remote part or any other part, there's not much that can be done on that data. And the whole objectivity is to bring connectivity to ensure that the data comes into a single data warehouse where there's a lot more that can be done with that data. So that's one. And again, considering challenges around connectivity, how is it that one can do that in a manner that makes it affordable for everyone? So that's the whole promise of IoT. That's when a huge competitive advantage can be built up by organizations that are able to get 100% of their data at all points of time. So that's I think the advantage of IoT.
So thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Agrawal, and thank you all eminent speakers. And I think it was a great session, and we talked about IoT integration, use of it in construction, maintenance services, IoT enabling energy sector, digital twin, which was the core of the part of the all conversation, holistic approach for integrating IoT digital value chain. And the bottom line was clearly, how the machine learning and IoT can help in terms of customer service and experience, which can enable businesses to do better and connect better. So with this, I would like to conclude this session. Thanks all my fellow panelists as well as FICCI for organizing such an important session, which is connecting us and is affecting our lives on a continuous basis. So